the committee to decide how it wants to organize itself. Is that fair?
Yeah,
I'm hoping
very fair.
there will be no public comment and there will be no public, the public can watch this meeting, but that's all. All right. Does anybody on the committee want to start this, or shall I?
Well, maybe we should start by asking if the committee members could unmute and show their video.
Okay, I didn't realize they were not on.
And maybe provide an intro.
They're
Katie?
all co-hosts, so they should be able to unmute and share their video.
Katie, you can unmute.
And Kirsten too.
Hi, Larry.
And Kirsten. Sorry, I didn't get
Hi,
Kirsten.
Kirsten.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Shirley.
Charlene?
I'm here.
Great.
I'm just having problems with the video.
That's okay. Your audio is, we can hear you perfectly.
Oh, that's fine then.
Okay.
I'm not dressed for the occasion anyway.
Fair enough.
I don't think you need to exactly dress for the occasion. Although undress is not allowed.
Oh, okay. No.
So there was a
That's too much
suggestion.
information. It's fine.
So there's a suggestion that maybe the steering committee members do a quick little self-intro. There was an interest in that, just so the public knows who you are, and that's one way to get us off and running.
Katie, why don't you begin then?
Sure thing. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie McGinn. I live here in Twin Lakes Village with my husband and my 1-year-old daughter, Margot, and our dog, Tucker. He's a corgi. We moved to town in 2016 and love being part of this community and just love it here. The lakes are a big part of why we love it, hence the picture in my background. A little bit about my professional background. I'm a chartered financial analyst. My career in finance has been focused on helping investors build investment strategies and long-term financial plans, all with an eye towards environmental and social sustainability. So, for example, the first half of my career, I worked with institutional investors, big endowments, foundations, public pension funds. One public example is the California State Public Employee Retirement System. So my team would partner with those groups and help them think about their investment process and how they were engaging with companies that they were investing in, how they could use environmental and social data to make better long-term investment decisions. So purely from the mandate of making better, wiser, long-term investment decisions, nothing, no other aspect came into it. So just environmental and social investing being good business. The second half of my career, I worked with individual investors and smaller endowments and foundations, and really focused on building long-term financial plans to help people think 20, 30, 40 years into the future about, what their cash flow would look like, how their debt would play out, things like that. Again, with an eye towards integrating their environmental and social goals into their planning and investment process. In that time frame, lots of experience coordinating different interested parties and getting organized for stakeholder meetings, board meetings, pulling together different presentation and agenda items, and just always keeping the eye towards action and moving things forward to the next action item. I consider that to be my specialty, is moving action items forward. So I'm looking forward to bringing that to the committee, and I'm really excited to be working with this fabulous group of people.
Maybe you should take my job pretty quickly if you like moving stuff forward. Mark.
Not yet.
How about you?
Well, this is great. This is actually great for our committee because we get a chance to meet each other and see each other. We haven't done that yet, unless I missed something. I might have missed something. But so this is really our first meeting. By the way, on my screen, I'm getting pop-ups suggesting that I admit people, but I don't really think that's my prerogative.
No,
No, it isn't.
Okay, you're doing that? Okay.
yep, we're
Yes.
doing that.
All right, so my name's Mark Robbins. I live here off of East Street in the Vista section. And so I moved to South Salem 5 years ago from Connecticut, formerly New York City, formerly San Francisco. And my background is in sustainable growth and clean energy advisory services. I have a small consulting firm that helps nonprofits and municipalities plan energy infrastructure projects, water infrastructure, sustainable growth, forest stewardship related matters, land use planning, and helping them to site and develop payback for clean energy systems, mostly solar and geothermal. And excited to be part of the group.
Great. Larry Mango.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Larry Mango. I've lived in town going on 14 years now. I live in the South Salem area of town. I'm actually neighbors with Janet and a few of the other people that I see on the screen. I can see Mountain Lakes Park from my front steps. I'm an active user of the parks. I was involved as a Boy Scout leader for my oldest son, who worked his way through the Katona-Lewisboro school system and is now in his first year at UC Berkeley. I also have a daughter who's a senior at the high school and a middle schooler who's going to be a high schooler next year. So I have three that are working their way through the school system here. I'm a commuter. I live in town, but in the time that I've lived here, I've commuted to Greenwich, Manhattan, White Plains, and now I'm commuting by car to Suffern. So I've used the public transit, the bus, and the rail system when I can. Now I'm driving. But I love it here. I work in real estate investment. Just in full disclosure, I did study urban planning. I have a master's degree in urban planning, and I attempted to work in that field until I realized that the monetary benefits were a lot more consequential in the private investment world. But one of the reasons why I'm very interested in this committee.
Charlene.
Hi, I've lived in Lewisboro about 16 years now. I am the newest member of the planning board, and I'm really enjoying myself. It's a well-run planning board. So I've been in government predominantly most of my career. I'm an attorney by trade. I'll start in Westchester. I was assistant corporation counsel, then deputy corporation counsel, then corporation counsel in the city of New Rochelle, and then I became city manager and stayed there for a number of years, developing like Home Depot, Price Club, that whole thing. I then left to my own firm. I had my own firm for about 5 years. And then I was asked to be county attorney of Westchester, which I did for 9 years. And after that, I was a commissioner of planning in Mount Vernon for a year. I then was asked to go to Roosevelt Island and run that, which I'm not sure, everybody knows what Roosevelt Island, it's a state agency. At that point, they were developing Cornell Techion. It has one main road and we had to build it, and it's on the other side of the bridge. So it was one road that took all that traffic. So it was interesting. After that, I went to Dobbs Ferry. My last job was at the village of Dobbs Ferry as administrator. And I have recently retired. So I'm also a member of the county parks board. So that's my background.
All right, if you want me to start this off, we had suggested to you.
Peter, I
Yes?
I hate to interrupt, but John Wolf is now in.
Oh,
Oh,
wonderful.
I didn't notice him. Sorry, John, introduce yourself.
I just snuck in. I didn't hear what everybody else is saying. My name is John Wolf. I worked at IBM for a heck of a long time. I currently chair the CAC for the town, and I recently founded a company with several of my friends in business analytics. I don't know what else you want to know. I've lived here since 1981.
That's great. And maybe lastly, everyone should know about Kirsten, that she'll be the
Oh, yeah.
she'll be the fifth Beatle or something, however that works. Sixth Beatle.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Kirsten Conran of South Salem. I've been here 20 years, and my husband and I raised 3 boys here. We love Lewisboro, and I support the planning board and ACARC, and undergrad in urban planning. And I was in high school when our last master plan was approved, so it's time.
Okay, that's the group which we've come up with. I think you're one heck of a well-qualified group. And I know you're going to do a good job. I had suggested that we had suggested that you appoint a chair amongst yourselves, but I'm hearing rumors that you don't want to. Who wants to speak? Am I right or wrong?
Maybe we should, well, we haven't had, this is sort of,
Yeah.
this is our meeting.
Exactly.
So, we were probably going to address that, perhaps those logistics on Friday when we're having our first get together, our first intro meeting. But so I don't have a developed position other than perhaps we would want to, instead of chair, we might want to champion areas of focus amongst ourselves. Maybe that would be a way to do it, but I don't know if you guys have had
You probably need a chair just for, rules of order and stuff, at least just for meetings, and then beyond that, you could do whatever you like.
I would imagine that would be wise, only because there's going to be a lot of interaction amongst other groups, and we'll need to have someone who is a point person. So even a chairman and a vice chairman, so you can sort of alternate on that. And but then again, I think you're very right. We are having a meeting Friday, and we should discuss all that. I had occasion to speak to Norma Drummond today, because I know her for years and years. And
he has enormous respect for you, Charlene. I can tell you that.
Yeah, and for the
we have
public's
enormous
benefit, can you
respect
say
for
who
each
Norma
other.
Drummond is. So
Norma Drummond is the planning commissioner in the county of Westchester. And I asked her if we had any materials that we could use. What she did offer, and I offer it now to the group, and I think this would help us, Bill Brady, who is also with the Planning Commission, and he has facilitated a number of master plans in various communities in Westchester. So if in fact, I know everybody has a really deep understanding of what we're going to do, and I'm sure that if we read a little more, we'll have even a deeper understanding. But I think that would be helpful to see what other communities have done.
Yeah, I remember they had made that offer at an earlier point when we started dialoguing, that they could actually occasionally send him to join your meetings. So
he's a really good guy. I mean, I know
Yeah.
he's very.
It's great. Add him to the resource list for sure.
Do you think you can, what I'd be interested in is whether you can persuade him to dedicate enough time to it?
I had that conversation with Norma, and they are really understaffed. So I think that we would have to use other resources also. I mean, we can ask on a personal basis, but they don't have a deputy anymore.
Yeah.
That's my impression,
Mhm.
wandering around the county planning department.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we always can speak to Ed Burrows. He did the original 1985 plan.
Mhm. Well, I think you're going to discover along the way, at, different times when you'd like to have support in different forms and different resources. And I think the number one thing we want to do here as a board is just to say, let us know. We want to do everything we can to support and, whatever you come up with to the best of our ability. So,
May I ask what your emphasis is on? I mean, do you have any direction as to that? And also, is there I hate to bring this up, is there some money available?
Yes, to the second.
yeah, no, we're prepared to spend money because we realize this is not to be cheaped out on. And being as it's 35 years since the last plan, I think if we amortize that and figure out how much it is per year, whatever we spend will not look very extravagant in any way. But beyond that, I think but I think in my mind, we have so for example, we talked about getting PACE in at one point to help with the early stage outreach, and organizing the soliciting the inputs. And maybe that's still something you want to look at, or maybe we've got, you can get task force of people to help out with that. I was thinking like get PACE to run like their land use Lula sessions, a dedicated session for us, and solicit all kinds of community leaders to come participate in something like that. Their educational, whatever it is, 3-day session. And that way, everybody is sort of warmed up for this whole exercise. They've brought on some new ways of thinking about things and skills before we start talking about specifics, so that'd be an example. Like if something like that was of interest, talk to them, find out. I think that would be an exciting way to help move things along, and whatever creative ideas.
We're sort of lucky because it's a census year and there's a lot of new information out there.
That should be coming in around September 1st, I think.
I think they have some numbers already, Peter.
Okay.
And that would be, that's something, because you need an update, even in my estimation, before you start going to the particulars, as Dan said.
Now, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just looking at the screen and the faces that I see, and are all the members then, it looks like, of the steering committee were able to attend, is that right?
Right.
Okay.
I would know, and just maybe we talked about this earlier, we talked about different sort of structures for this thing, and other views of the steering committee maybe have a few more members than this, but then in some of our dialogue, I forget who we were talking to, there was a question like, well, you can have like task forces and sort of split things out, and you guys are just, the conductor for all that. But if along the way you decide, what, we really need a couple more members to be part of the inner steering committee, there's no reason you can't come back to us for that too. Say we want to add whatever members. So I think we're really flexible in the ways we support.
So Dan, I'd like to speak to that point you bring up. And first of all, I think a lot of us did start to get running here. Janet Anderson sent an email out suggesting we sit in on the State of New York Planning Federation webinar, which we all did, and was really interesting. So back in my mind, that's a resource. I want to get the slide deck, but that was a great primer.
Yeah,
Great
I decided
graphic.
on that too.
it was very contemporary.
And that was actually where I saw the like small versus large dialogue too, I think. I don't know if it was in the chat or part of the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a super helpful kind of crash course. So two things, figuring out who the stakeholders are and what our nodes of information are. One thing I had a chance to get together this weekend with Tony, and I said, tell me everything there is to know about Golden's Bridge. So we started breaking it off into weekends and driving around and getting to know, where's the blight, where's the opportunity, where's the intermodal connections, what's been done. And we sort of said, hey, all of this research and census and growth really informs the Board of Ed. And I'm sure that they might be doing some of this in parallel, and they certainly have a lot of data, because I started to put together an inventory.
It'd be shorter than normal. It just started earlier. 9:30 easy.
Somebody jump in there. Yeah, so I was saying I was putting together an inventory of facilities. What are the town assets? What are the school assets? What are we doing with them? How do we repurpose or occupy these spaces? And I bet they would be a good partner in this, or at least for us to have a representative from the Board of Ed, because that certainly informs population growth and land use and school resources. And Jane, started with this on our last meeting, suggesting that the town had a different complexion and anticipated demographics when a lot of these buildings were built. So if we could have a Board of Ed contact, I think that would be good.
And I think that we have some recent changes in terms of who's moving into the town, and I'm not sure that's going to show up in the census, but I think we probably need to, either the school board or even some of the real estate agents probably could give us some insight into that.
I think it's kind of interesting because at the moment, because I think the town is going through a wholesale, or rather in my mind, a wholesale change. I may be wrong about that. But when you read Ed's master plan, it is, we want to keep this area as rural as possible, even although it is becoming to some extent suburban. We want to fight that and keep it rural. I'm not sure that the people moving into town necessarily want that. I think they certainly want a lot of stuff within walking distance of their homes, and do not necessarily expect to drive everywhere, or would prefer not to drive everywhere. How much we can do in that area, I have no idea.
So
But
I think that's all the stuff that ought to come out of the public solicitation. We all have our images of what people expect and think, but we really have to try and put that aside for a while, because we need to go into town and slice and dice it in a million ways, and asking questions in different ways, and really pull out as much data as possible before we start to draw out conclusions. And
all right, I think the other thing that I would offer you as a resource, we have got quite a lot of committees in this town. We've got a housing committee. And I would suggest that at some stage you at least talk to the head of the housing committee, Jane Lindau. We have got a communications committee. It isn't technically called that. It's what's it called? The board for
Antenna.
Antenna Advisory Board.
Antenna Advisory Board, which has also been given the task of looking into broadening internet access, which I think is becoming more and more important. And if you go through the various boards and committees in town, you have got an array of talent and of points of view, presumably, about different aspects of the town.
Go ahead.
To Dan's point about pulling together all the different stakeholders within town and all these great ideas about different stakeholders and resources. just thinking about getting the process going, for me, it would be really helpful to hear from you, the board members, in terms of where we're starting and where we're going. What would you really like to come out of this? You know, what's your vision for having that new plan in your hand, what you would use it for? What does the end point look like for you? That would really help me envision what this process is going to look like.
I think having the plan in hand is a matter of saying, yes, we did a really thorough job of, talking with everybody and coming up with something that is some kind of consensus about, how things are now and where they want to go. We, in meeting after meeting, whether it's the town board or the planning board, people are always making assumptions we just heard here, and we tend to. And this is an effort to bring, more people into the process of crystallizing that vision.
Dan, one of the issues that I'm quite concerned about is getting all our residents involved in it, rather than just the squeaky wheels or the people who are, just interested in one area. And they did have in that presentation, they did have something that was really quite interesting, the pop-up meetings. And I thought that was great, because it's invariable that there's people who are interested, and then there's people who just live here who will be interested but are not. So I think that should be an emphasis of ours, on how to get everyone informed, at least.
Yeah, and I think you already have some Hamlet subcommittees or Hamlet groups who could be subcommittees to this overall effort. And they could certainly be the focus on, ideas surrounding their hamlets and how that blends in with the overall
that's a good idea.
of the town.
I think it's all the above. I mean, there should just be lots and lots of meetings. And if I were you, I would consider, anointing all these different groups with the task of hosting and doing those things in their sector. So, housing, I've already asked them, actually, would you want to serve as a point for organizing a community meeting on housing? So you'd have to do more than you do, in your committees. You sit around, you talk, and you come up with conclusions. But here, this is an external facing thing. Are you okay with that? Or should they go out and find other people to do it? And they said, yeah, that would be fun and interesting. So you can deputize, stay connected and help them organize, but let them take the lead on their sectors. And, we get the business people to come out and host their own meeting, or, really try to have people get ownership. But I like your pop-up idea also, because now you're going outside of the groups that, have their fixed identities and everything, and you're just kind of slicing randomly through them. And it's a good kind of check on yourself to make sure you're not, falling into some ruts. So that's a cool idea. And maybe you can get a little subcommittee task force, which is helping you with like the outreach organization. Even you guys don't have to do everything. There's some people in town that are just like amazing at, reaching out, and, just like that's their thing. And maybe you want to get a few of those people to add to your capabilities.
I would love to just go back for just a minute and address Katie's question of the vision, and then actually go on to contribute to what everyone was saying about gathering feedback. So Katie, I think that my vision for what would come out of this process is a plan in hand that we can refer to when we're making planning and like capital investment decisions for the town. And then it'll be based in this document that the five of you have worked really hard to get all the information you can. And I also want to take, to bring in Charlene's point of we're going to hear from the people that we're used to hearing from, which is wonderful because they're an integral part of this town. But I want to think about like all those different strategies for bringing in voices of people who are really invested in our community, but are not as invested in town government, or quite frankly, meetings that take hours. And so I love the idea of pop-up meetings. I also love the idea of like soliciting feedback through surveys and, just using these different platforms. And, also another thing we can offer is our communications platforms, right? We can send anything out through our community announcements or on social media, or so I am really interested in getting like as much feedback as possible. Yeah, so thank you.
Practically, do you need some, Dan, you'd come up with some way of this committee communicating amongst themselves and also communicating with the world at large, I think.
Yeah, so I've been working with Joel, and we met with the service provider this morning, and I forwarded the quote to you guys. It would be a standalone domain that would be basically a Google suite, so that folks could kind of control things, and they wouldn't have to go to Joel for every time they wanted to give access to a folder to somebody, and it would give them a full set of tools with, document storage. There'd be backup structures that meet our compliance requirements for document retention and backup, to a third party. And so, as I say, Joel looked it over. He's happy with it, and I'd like everybody to, if they're okay with that, to okay the supervisor signing off on that at some point during the night. But I think we're ready to set that up.
And it seems like the key to the long-term success of this plan is to have a lot of community involvement and community engagement. And I think I expect that this process will go on for an extended period of time in order to get to the end result. So the APA course that we sat in on or reviewed the materials from, they suggested a 12 to 18 month process, and we're just starting at the beginning. And I think it will be really important just for each of the meetings that we have, that we're documenting the meetings, the times of the meetings, who participated in the meetings. And I just want to make sure that we have those resources available. And it sounds like based on just where we are with the pandemic still, that we will be meeting, most of the meetings will be over Zoom, at least to start, or something similar, Google, maybe a Google version of Zoom. But I just want to make sure that we have the resources available. I'm not entirely technical on how all of these different platforms work, but I want to make sure that we are able to efficiently keep records of the meetings and who's attending and participating.
But with Zoom, you can record all the meetings, so you have that.
Yeah, and Kirsten here is going to be deputed to the committee by the town to help keep all those things in good shape. So you'll have expert assistance with that. So I think that should help.
Do our meetings need to be noticed? Is there a compliance with respect to giving a period of time for public notification of meetings?
Greg, help.
Sure. Being that the
Don't-
committee, go ahead.
I said,
being
don't
that-
sleep. Wake
I'm
up.
not yet. It's not 11:30 yet, Peter. Being that the committee is really strictly advisory in its capacity, you're not bound to the notice requirements, the open meeting requirements under the public officers law. The way that the town tends to do everything with its numerous advisory committees is to notice and conduct them in compliance with the open meetings law regardless. So the question being, are you required to? The answer is really no, but it's the habit and the process of the town to really do that. So my understanding is maybe for the first few meetings when you kind of get your feet under you as a committee, those will be something that you'll do among the committee members, maybe Kirsten. And then after that, when you conduct the meetings, then you'll probably do them by with some reasonable notice and via Zoom where you can let people in, even if you're not letting them, speak, obviously, but they can at least view what's happening, and you make some sort of minutes or records, or you have it recorded. But at
I mean, and what we do in the CAC is we have it's posted on the town website.
Right.
You have to request from me the Zoom information to come in. So it's somewhat controlled, but it is open.
And your agenda's up there, right, John? People can see
Agenda's up
what's on.
there, the minutes are up there. It's all up there.
Fair enough.
I guess it's just one thought I wanted to share in listening to everybody. I guess the document and figuring out where we go for the next generation part of how it can be extremely helpful if it incorporates the technology. I just think about when the last plan in 1985, you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have electric car charging, and just to the extent it can be part of the discussion, how can the technology on a going forward basis create opportunities for our town that might not otherwise exist? And that's something where that's calling on people's expertise as opposed to getting input from community members is what they like the community to be. But that's a real educational component as to where we're going to be able to go in the future and what opportunities are going to present itself.
Well, I think to your point, Rich, that the information that we have in my business is that 20% of the people are going to continue to work from home after all this is over. And so the town infrastructure in terms of supporting that is going to be a key element of whether people want to move here or not. So, all of that is different than it was in 1985. And the fact that IBM is closed and Pepsi's closed. I mean, there's a whole lot of changes from that period that are going to impact the infrastructure.
There is one other thing there's at least one other thing you should be aware of. There is an operation called Cityscape, which is currently creating a cell tower master plan for northern Westchester, northeastern Westchester. And that is due kind of this fall. But I've got a feeling that that COVID is delaying them, and I'll be surprised if they come in much before the end of the year.
Aren't they also doing a Lewisboro specific plan?
They are. They're doing municipality specific, and then it's part of the overall Northern Westchester requirements. For some.
One of the important reasons for doing more is so that if they plump a cell tower in a certain position, maybe it can be in Pound Ridge, but really help us. It can be in Katona and really help us. That's North Salem, obviously. And that's one of the reasons why they've been asked to look at the area.
Well, I think the other trend there is that the Verizons of the world want to get into the internet business by making it available through the cell towers so that we have some options other than Optimum. So that's another.
That would be good. Sorry.
I don't know how that would work with our scarcity of cell towers, because I happen to know that Verizon technology extremely well because I worked with IBM research on it, but it would be wonderful to have another option in this town. So,
John, next time I get on a Verizon call, I'm going to invite you.
So the Cityscape individuals, the consultants there, are collaborating currently with our antenna advisory board as well. So that will be a place for you to connect with them. So Joseph Newey is the chair of the antenna advisory board. And so when it comes to that infrastructure, John, I think that, again, we want community input, but I think nail on the head with the working from home culture. It's a new economy. And I think Lewisboro is really prime for it.
It's going to be a big deal. It's going to be a big deal going forward, I think.
Yeah, well, that's just again, another element that you'll be surveying the community about. And if there's a groundswell, maybe that means we're making investments in certain area because the community wants wants certain things, and that'll be really interesting to see. And speaking of investing, we talked about what the plan would be used for. In my mind, we could almost, when we've talked about this before, for especially for the hamlet centers of Golden's Bridge and such, we might want to take this thing all the way then to the next phase, which is like a generic EIS, generic environmental impact statement, where we actually plan out the neighborhood in real specifics and get that approved. And to the extent that developers can come in, they know exactly what the community wants, and they know they're not going to have 3 years to debate about a project because the community already said they want it and it's already, mostly approved. So that could be an outcome too, if we start having those discussions and people really are able to bring that vision to the table.
Do we want to set any interim benchmarks along the way, or do we want to get feedback from the committee once they start meeting? Just that the bottom line is that we're making progress towards an end game at some point in time. Just the best way to address that.
I think you might want to have a scope before too long.
So maybe you guys can, one of your first tasks is kind of get a real rough sense of what that schedule looks like and what are the milestones. And we know we have maybe an RFP for a planner is out there somewhere, and what do we have to do to get in position where we feel like it's a good time to do that? Just pick some milestones and figure out how to get there and rough it out a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's what we need to do in the first few meetings.
And I think there's also the creation of the subcommittees, right? So we talked about some committees that exist, but there may be others that don't exist that we need to put together. So there's the recruiting piece, right, to form those committees potentially. So I think that's something
all
that
those
should
are
be done
tasks
up front. Yep.
So in terms of resources, the Hamlet organizations or committees, so I know there's one being formed, Peter Cipriano is forming one for Vista, and I know you've got one, Tony, in Golden's Bridge.
Right.
I assume Walkabuck has done that.
There's the Landowners Association, then you've got all these lake associations throughout town, which are pretty darn powerful in their own areas. Whether it's the Lake Kitchewan Association, the Three Lakes, the Twin Lakes, Truesdale has sort of 2.5. Is that unfair, Kirsten?
I mean,
Two.
Oak Ridge, the Oak Ridge condo, there are probably 350
Yes.
people there in that association alone. So,
And Cross River has formed something of a hamlet committee.
Right.
I don't think they're as far along as Golden's Bridge or anything, but they're there too. So strong focus in the 3 core commercial hamlets, I think.
And you could put together a South Salem hamlet very easily, a group very easily. There are a lot of people who like speaking publicly there.
Mhm.
Was that a polite way of putting it, Rich? Anyway, the other reason for, one of the reasons for me at least supporting this now is that I've been accused of doing little bits of replanning all over the place, whether it is suddenly doing a little rezoning in Old Golden's Bridge, whether it is allowing Tom Gossett to change what he is doing at his garden center. That kind of thing has come up more and more often, and it's becoming obvious that the existing plan doesn't really meet the demands of the town.
Also, when we apply for money, they often ask about it, and
Oh, yes, that's true.
were just passed right over because our the comprehensive plan is so old.
But I still think it would be worth your while having a fairly early meeting with Ed Burrows. He's a hell of a good planner.
Excellent.
Even if his plan of this town is a little bit dated.
And going to Jane's point, aside from not being able to get money, is that also once we have an idea what we're looking for, it'll help to focus us on where the financial opportunities present themselves.
I mean, the other fascinating thing is if you read Ed's plan, it foresaw a need for sewering some areas of town. As far as I know, we've done nothing.
Right.
Now, part of that is because 72% of this town is in the FAD. Oh no, about 50% is in the FAD, 72% is in the New York City watershed.
And what's the FAD, Peter?
The FAD is freedom, is the area where you don't have to filter or in any way treat the water before it's drunk.
It's
Now, what?
It's the filtration avoidance determination.
Yes,
made by the FDA
thanks.
several decades ago that allowed for certain activities within the watershed without having to go through filtration. So, sorry.
And that's the Cross River Reservoir is one of the foci of that. And once you've, and the drainage area into that reservoir is pretty darn large, so that Walkerbuck, Kitchewan, Truesdale are all in that. All right, anything else? Or have we-
Well, just speaking about that, maybe it's somebody in GIS or mapping, but as I drive around, I come upon signs that say you're in a drinking quality watershed, you're in the deep territory. This is a historic registered section of town. So what does that mean? Who has jurisdiction if I'm in an area that's New York State historic mile? Does that mean that impacts the signage or the choice of materials that we might be trying to standardize?
I don't think so, but what does affect it is if you're in, and if you go through the old master plan, you will find it lays out architectural areas where you are restricted. You've got to go in front of the Architectural Review Board.
They call them character districts.
Yes, character.
Elmwood Road being one of them.
And we
Yeah,
have,
you try and define the character of Elmwood Road in one sentence.
stone walls.
All right.
we have a
That's
wealth
what
of
the plan
knowledge
says.
in Kirsten as well,
Hey.
who mentioned during her introduction that she supports the ACARC and the planning department. So she'll have a lot of resources for you.
ACARC has
ACARC
5
is-
special character overlay districts in town.
Yes,
We can talk more
ACARC
about that.
is fun because it's the only committee which is totally, as far as I can see, ungoverned by any law. And you can just speak your mind and say, what I like is.
That's half the time. Half the time is the town code too.
Oh, okay. I never noticed that part.
Well, we also have Sam Weir from the county.
Yes.
And he is in charge of GIS for the whole county, and he luckily lives up here, so we're gonna have him too as a,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, you've got an enormous asset in Sam Weir.
Oh, yeah.
fortunately, the old 1985 plan has a ton of GIS information in it, which has probably not changed a heck of a lot.
That's true too.
Oh, but now, I mean, you can go right away to Sam. It's like, there's a whole set of base maps and everything that kind of just by default, every plan, slaps that in there, right? So you could probably do that sooner rather than later. So you have that resource at your hands for all the different exercises you're doing. And he'll be a great resource for that.
Kirsten, were we supposed to pick up documents? Do you make copies of, I saw a thread about picking up copies of a document.
Just that beautiful map.
Okay.
And if you don't have a chance to pick it up, I can pop one in the mail to you.
Oh, that's
Okay,
really cool.
well, that'd be great.
That's great.
Katie, I sent yours, Larry's, and Janet's out today.
I'm going to come.
The other thing which provides a different type of vision of Lewisboro is walking wild in Lewisboro, which is published by the Lewisboro Land Trust, I think now, but is available in the townhouse. And Walking Wild, in fact, gives us maps of every preserve in town. Now, remember, there are the county reserves, which are huge. There are the town reserves, which vary. But then there are all these private reserves in town belonging to the Lewisboro Land Trust, belonging to the Westchester Land Trust, and various groups like the Audubon Society.
And the horse people too have them.
That's right. The Bedford Riding Lanes Association. And I think Lewisboro Horsemen, maybe.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
Yes.
You have the link on the town website to the trails, individual trails. To get everybody.
And I'm not saying that's a law. It's just a different way of looking at the town to a zoning map.
Is that Walking Westchester, which has more than Lewisboro, right? It has the whole. town.
Yes, that has a place called Westchester, which it
Right.
covers.
And they have a new edition out, by the way.
I've got no more to, and I'm not sure I've added much, but I certainly don't have any more to say.
Okay.
Do you, as our committee, feel like you have a jumping off point from this?
Well, we'll have one after Friday.
Okay.
Great job.
Yeah,
It was
this is
really great to
helpful.
have you all here for our work session, and I'm very enthusiastic. I'm really looking forward to the work and the product and the whole process. Thank you for dedicating your time.
I think the entire town board, is very much in favor of this project and wants to give you every piece of help it can. So do not hesitate to call us and to ask us for information, ask us for contacts, ask us for anything else.
Or tell us to leave us alone.
Charlene, you already have the county pretty well sewn up, I think.
Yeah, I anything I can do, I will.
Thank you, everyone, for your
Great.
service. And we have an exemplary group to get out of the blocks. Terrific.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay for a town board meeting, but you don't have to.
And enjoy the fun of the tree ordinance. That should be.
So Rich and Tony and Dan and Greg, you all have to stay.
Oh.
Peter has to stay too. Talking to us. And Janet. right?
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Thank you. Have a
Good
good night.
night.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Gotta remember, don't we get kicked out and then come back in?
Do we?
No, I don't think
Oh,
so.
Sam, I don't think so, yeah. We'll just,
Ja- Janet, people can just stay, right?
Oh, sure, but they won't be co-hosts. We'll reassign
they
you
won't
if.
be.
right.
Yeah.
You don't have to get kicked out, but if you could turn off your video and mute, and then Joel and Janet will make that.
Joel's de-co-hosting you,
Yeah.
John.
We have 1 minute for this brief commercial break, right, while I get some water?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, actually, oh, have.
Same here.
I'm
Yeah,
good.
I think I'll be incognito for the tree ordinance part.
Yeah, that's,
I'm not sure you're very good at that, are you?
Just
well,
so you, just so you know, we're
Incognito, I
still,
mean.
we're live.
just so you know, we're still recording.
Oh,
Just FYI.
That
so
was,
I'm supposed to be nice to people?
Well, why don't you mute yourself for a minute?
that's just super. I mean, I know that we're all muting ourselves for a minute, but Dan, we're the only two left here. Just super, right?
It is super. It is
Yeah.
super. Yeah, it was really upbeat thing. It's exciting. And
The talented, skillful group of people, and just the little bit of energy I felt tonight was it's a good thing. I'm looking
and
forward to
you
them.
could see the commitment to the process and getting out there and making everybody a part of it. And that's what's really nice.
Yeah. And like a really realistic sense of the task at hand.
Yeah, yeah. Important.
Yeah. Now they get to take off.
How long did anybody have any idea how long the initial master plan took to create from soup to nuts?
That's such a good question. Ed Burrows would be the person I would ask.
I think about 2 years.
Okay.
I guess there's more stuff, but the technology will help that aspect.
Well, I think
but
I think the main driver of the 85 plan was preservation of land, right? I think Peter
that's right.
mentioned that
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah, they wanted a suburban community inside a rural atmosphere. And they worked very hard at that.
As far as how long it takes, we did hear in that presentation about master plans that they do urge you to keep plugging right along, and so shorter, if you can hit that 1 year mark, it may be better because you'll just be keeping all those thoughts in your head there rather than like, oh yeah, we had this meeting a year and a half ago and we talked about something.
Yeah.
So there's nothing particularly good about it going out in a year and a half, 2 years.
Right.
And it is possible to do in a year if you just, and I wouldn't put it past our team. They're really, these are really organized people that they might be able to pull that off. And especially because these days, a lot of the resources are available, where in the past, it took to get all these maps and all this kind of stuff everything was a struggle. So
Get it go somewhere.
see how the process unfolds. It gets to a point where you do that, in research, they call it saturating the literature, right? In your lit review, you get to the point where you're starting to hear the same things over and over, different themes are popping up, and then it's time to move right along.
Mhm.
I have a sense that this group will have a really keen sense of that timing. So whether that takes 12 months or 24 months, I trust that it will take the amount of time it needs to take.
What's that called? Saturating literature?
If you're doing like a research paper and you do a lit review, once you start seeing like the same references at the end of the papers and the bibliographies over and over and over, you're done. You've saturated the literature and it's time to move on, or you can spend your entire process in your lit review.
Same thing in legal research and doing a brief.
Oh,
Same concept, yes.
so interesting, right? The overlap.
Exactly the same.
All right, Peter,
So Peter,
Yeah.
you ready?
Want to start?
Sure, if you want to.
All right. I'll be
Yes.
with you in 2 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the town board meeting of March 8th. I am Supervisor Peter Parsons, and I call to order the Town of Lewisboro Town Board meeting for Monday, March 8th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. Before I go any further, I want to confirm that Joel has started recording this meeting in accordance with the Governor's Executive Order number 202.1. This meeting is being conducted via Zoom. That link has been provided to the public so that they can view the meeting, and we have confirmed that the feed is active and working. I have confirmed with Janet, our town clerk, that the meeting has been duly noticed and legal notice requirements fulfilled. Notice has been placed on the Town of Lewisboro website, including in the email distributions from the town. With me on this Zoom conference meeting from the Town of Lewisboro, members of the town board, Rich Sclarin, Jane Crimmins, Tony Gonsalves, and Dan Welsh. We have a quorum and can vote on any matters that come before the board. In addition, we have town attorney Greg Fulchetti, town clerk Janet Donahue, and Joel Smith, facilities maintenance director. Mary Hafter, the benefits manager. At the public comments period, we ask that only the following persons will be permitted to speak: residents of the Town of Lewisboro or Katona-Lewisboro School District, owners of property in the Town of Lewisboro, employees of the Town of Lewisboro. If you want to speak at the public meeting or make a public comment, please raise your hand at the appropriate time. To do that, if you are on Zoom, put your cursor at the bottom of the window and you should see an image of people labeled participants. Click, sorry. Click on that to get a panel at the right-hand side with icons at the bottom. You can then click raise hand. Participants who have raised their hand will show up on the host screen in the order that they raised their hand. The host will then unmute you and tell you you have the floor. You may also have to unmute yourself if your microphone isn't active. We are asking that your video be off during the duration of the meeting and only turned on when invited to speak. If you have dialed in on a phone, you can raise your hand to indicate you want to talk by pressing *9. We will ask people to give their name and which hamlet they live in upon entering, and to keep their comments to 2 minutes. Our town clerk will be keeping time, and you will hear a timer at the end of 2 minutes. If someone is disrespectful or uses profanity at this meeting, they will be asked to leave the virtual meeting, just as they would be asked to leave a physical meeting. Please remember that your camera is on, and profanity will not be tolerated in any form, including gestures and acronyms. And in addition, your comments should be limited to policies, not to attacks on individual people. Thank you very much. Now stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of
America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would, if I can find the agenda, we'll begin this meeting.
Well, while you're looking, Greg, is the executive order as far as virtual meetings, that keeps getting extended in 30-day increments? Is that where it's at?
Correct.
Yes, and
You're still within your window.
That's maybe one thing which it's worthwhile going into. You know that the governor's ability to issue new executive orders has been more than curtailed. But all his existing executive orders remain in place. And he is able to renew those. So the executive order allowing us to do this meeting on Zoom remains. And and it's really only on new orders that he has that he's lost his ability to manage things. I'd like to open a public session on the tree ordinance, proposed law number 2 of the year 2021. This law is intended to recognize that the trees and forests in the town are an integral part of the natural ecosystem.
Peter,
And
can we finish the open hearing part? We need a second and all that first. We're opening.
All right, I need a motion to open the public hearing. Okay, I propose we open the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, let's go back.
Sorry.
The purpose of this law is to recognize that the trees and forests in the town are an integral part of its natural ecosystem and enhance the environmental resources of the town. Trees play a vital role in protecting the town's valuable wetlands, water bodies, and drinking water resources. Trees contribute to the natural beauty of our landscape and provide wildlife habitat. The presence of trees adds value to the individual homes and can help create a feeling of privacy. Properly located trees can help reduce home heating and cooling costs. Trees absorb carbon dioxide and polluting particulates. Trees on steep slopes help reduce runoff and erosion. Trees help reduce stormwater runoff, and their presence can help reduce the expense of stormwater management practices. Trees are a valued component of the Lewisboro community character and appearance. Therefore, it should be the policy of the town to ensure that these natural resources are maintained, managed, and preserved in a manner so as to minimize undesirable environmental impact and to protect the health, safety, and welfare of present and future residents of the town. I think it's worthwhile mentioning, because there's been some discussion about it, that the best carbon capture technology that has ever been created are trees and forests. Forests sequester or store carbon, mainly in trees and soil. When we cut down a tree, that carbon is released. So we need to keep our existing large trees, and at the same time, we need to keep our younger trees because they are the trees which are currently adding to the stock of carbon which is preserved. Tony, did you want to lay out the items for which a tree removal permit is not required?
Yeah, maybe what I will do is I'll share my screen so that everyone can see that. So let's see. Tree removal permit required. Okay. So this is in paragraph 203-4B. So these are the exceptions where no tree removal permit is required for the removal of any of the following on the owner's property. So number one, I'll read them out individually. Removal of any dead tree, hazardous tree, or other tree that creates an actual or ongoing emergency condition. The approving authority may require verification and or photograph documentation, which demonstrates that such a tree was dead, hazardous, or created an actual or ongoing emergency. Number two, as necessary to control forest fires during such fires. Number three, as necessary to maintain town, county, state, or utility rights of way, provided that such removal is conducted according to lawful easements, statutory requirements, and or franchise agreements. Number four, tree removal directed by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation for control of invasive species or pest control, provided that the agency files with the approving authority a plan showing the areas of removal before commencing such operation, except when required emergency removal makes such filing impractical. Number five, tree removal, which is part of a forest management plan that has been filed and approved by the New York State DEC or any other agency having jurisdiction. Number six, trees that are removed to enable agricultural activity as defined in this chapter. So these are the exceptions to requiring a permit for tree removal.
All right. This meeting is open to the public to speak about this proposed law. Who wishes to speak?
Should I leave the screen shared in case we need to reference
Certainly.
it? Okay.
This. It's kind of hard for me to see who's got the hands up now, though, but I will do my best. Sam Zafiro, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Can you hear us, Sam?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you talk a little louder?
Yes. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sam Zafiro from South Salem. I'd like to express my concerns regarding the proposed tree ordinance and submit the following questions to the board. If the town plans to designate the current wetlands engineer, who is not a certified arborist, to become the approving authority, how will they fund the certification process? Have funds already been earmarked? If not, why are we to trust the opinion of an uncertified authority or that of the many tree service professionals in our town who routinely give expert opinion to property owners regarding the removal of trees? Does the town board presume greater knowledge of agriculture than these local arborists who upon consultation disapproved of this proposal last week? Will the town ensure that the building inspector or other designated authority review applications in a timely manner when they've been months behind in approving other permit applications for nearly a year? And if trees not approved for removal within 60 days fall, causing damage, injury, or death, will the town willingly incur financial responsibility? Why has tree removal only become an issue after town board member Dan Walsh removed healthy trees from his own property in order to install solar panels? This town is home to many small businesses which provide tree services performed by licensed arborists, several of which have even provided free tree felling and removal in the town park last year. These businesses were directly affected by the COVID restrictions and in many cases continue to struggle. Unlike a town board position, they're unable to collect salaries working from home and must actively service clients to maintain their business and support their families. Interestingly, this proposal follows a widely criticized leaf blower ban that would have placed an unfair burden on Lewisboro's lawn service businesses, as well as those who maintain their own properties. We're once again entertaining policies which target the working. A town board which routinely attempts to penalize working class citizens with 3 seats opening in November might do well to reread their own welcome resolution as it pertains to class discrimination and focus on the few issues that actually need addressing rather than creating solutions to problems that don't exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Next, I'm asking Kathy. This is Jack Zittimer, I believe. Jack, I'm asking you to unmute.
Yes, hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. I would just like to express my support for this ordinance. We live in Golden's Bridge in an area with, fortunately, a number of large, beautiful hickories and oak trees still on this property, on our properties, and I have been dismayed and disappointed and saddened by some of the tree removal that's gone on and some neighboring houses, and of a big, beautiful hickories and oaks, which, you know, some of which were probably well in excess of 100 years old. And I totally support the sentiment of needing to absorb carbon and create, you know, produce oxygen and all the wonderful things that the trees do to keep our world healthy. And we need to be, and I respect and support the town for doing for enacting this ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Next, I'm asking Catherine Demoto to unmute.
Janet, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Good evening, and thank you guys for allowing me to speak at the board this evening. My name is Catherine Demoto, and I live in Vista. I'm speaking tonight against the tree ordinance plan. Last August, a terrible thunderstorm ripped through my property, taking with it approximately 9 trees, 2 of which were healthy, full-grown trees. In 20 seconds, 9 trees came down. The 2 largest ones ripped up some of my driveway, making it impassable. Another destroyed our sunroom, which is still covered in a tarp today. There was nothing to show that these healthy trees would fall in a matter of seconds. The trees completely uprooted. I don't understand why the town believes to know my property better than myself. Furthermore, why do you think I would just decide one day to take down all the trees on my property? It cost me $11,000 to cut up and pile the trees that fell that day. It would cost twice that to remove all the trees around my home. Who has nearly $20,000 to take down a bunch of trees? Now back to the tarp on my roof. A rebuild permit is taking 5 months. How long would a tree removal permit take? What happens if the tree comes down while I'm waiting for the permit to remove it? The town is now partially responsible for the damage. They have been given actual notice, since the permit application is the notification of the problem. I'm quite certain any insurance company would be happy to take the town to court to recapture their losses. This ordinance seems more applicable to a developer than a sole homeowner. In closing, I believe that I know my trees and my property that may be danger to myself and my home. I do not need the town to tell me what's safe. I find the entire idea slightly ridiculous. The town board seems to want to control every aspect of our land. Enough is enough. If you want to control what I do with my property, please get your checkbook out and start paying my taxes. Thank you so much. Good night.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Next, I'm asking Peter, if when I unmute you, if you could state your full name, please. Peter, I'm asking you to unmute.
Okay, let's see if that works.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, my name is Peter Rinaldi. I'm a town resident for over 45 years here in Lewisboro. I live in the Twin Lakes area of South Salem. And I've looked at the tree ordinance, and I just find that the proposed ordinance is written overly restrictive. It takes the control of trees that are on private property away from the owner and actually virtually puts them in the control of the town. I don't know if that's what you want, but that's what it does. Also, I'm trying to understand what the specific problem is that we have in this town that this ordinance is trying to address. I mean, over the years, I've lived in a neighborhood with over 100 to 150 homes. And the only really trees I've seen that have been removed are ones that have been in the area of power lines. And more recently, people removing ash trees because they've died and they're a threat to their home and their property. I haven't seen where there's such a major issue in this town with tree slashing, at least in homeowners, that we need such a restrictive ordinance. The proposal as written leaves it to the town to determine if a tree poses a danger to the homeowner. And if it can be removed for whatever reason, it puts it not in the owner's hands, but that in the town. And now to determine what the priority is. I wonder if the liability now is with the town and not with the homeowner. I would suggest if you have to go with an ordinance to make it less restrictive for the homeowner, why not put a section in 203-4B where you have exceptions? Why not add that any tree on the owner's property within 100 feet of the property's owner's residence is accepted? That way, if a tree, most trees are not over 100 feet, but trees can reach 75 and 80 feet next to a homeowner's residence. And the homeowner can determine if that tree is a danger to its home or for whatever reason it needs to be removed. Right now, you've made it very restrictive. I would ask that you unrestrict that and leave some control in the homeowner, much more than what you have right now. And
Okay.
try not to add bureaucracy to the town, or which we already have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Peter. Next, I'm asking Dean Travellino to unmute. Dean?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I think I proved last week or 2 weeks ago at the last meeting that I really can't say what I have to say in 2 minutes. So I sent earlier today, I sent email into the whole board that has most of my concerns in it. I just wanted to mention at this point that there are safeguards in the law, like the last speaker spoke about, in the other towns that do respect homeowners' rights, especially when making decisions about trees in proximity of their homes. Lewisboro's existing ordinance, section 203, has a similar part of it. I didn't even realize it was in the law until yesterday when I was looking it up, that really respects homeowners. I detailed it in my email, working around their homes, enjoying their homes, doing extensions on their homes that give them more leeway for that, not to be further further slow down the whole approval process. I hope these can be considered and brought into the ordinance in some matter. I detail other concerns in my email, but mine are just some of many I've heard from others, including our professional landscapers. It seems to me that most residents are waking up to this right now and really didn't know about it and learn about it until the last few days. I think what I would propose is let's fix the clear cutting loophole. Everyone agrees that that's not something that should happen, even if it's not a big problem, it does happen. And let's not rush to do the other things right now, especially you're starting a master plan update. Let's be careful with unintended consequences that all these regulations seem to have. Please take the time to revise the ordinance in a fair and effective way. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. And that appears it. Tony, would you mind just taking your screen share off so I can just make sure? Thank you. I do have one more. I do have two more. And three more. Kyle Jones, I'm asking you to unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Kyle.
Okay. Well, at the meeting we had last week, we talked about that the wetlands engineer was going to be the tree ordinance supervisor. Has that changed since we had our meeting? Because he's not a licensed arborist in the town for anything. And you say here in your second line in your 203, trees play a vital role in protecting towns' valuable wetlands, water bodies, and drinking water resources. What about all the salt that gets put on the roads that is killing the trees? That is what's killing our water, not the trees. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. I'm now asking Laura Millett to unmute.
Hello. It's actually not Laura. That's misnamed. That's my wife. It's Paul Milliot, Golden's Bridge. I got a chance to read Dean's letter on a Facebook link late this afternoon. And we just wanted to say I thought it was really well written and expressed many of my similar views on the proposed ordinance. It seems to go too far, especially given the nature of the town, if you will. We're all living essentially in the forest here, or many of us, and we have so many trees that are becoming hazards. There's no definition of what hazardous is in the ordinance. That could be a good thing if it's interpreted liberally. It could be a really problematic thing if it's interpreted very conservatively. And in terms of burden, besides the time, there's reference to the requests for opinions of CAC, and or it seems to extend to the consultants of the various town boards. I don't know how the town is working. I know other towns, when you submit an application and they submit for comments from their professional consultants, the applicant has to pay those consultant fees. So there's great potential to add cost to what's already a very costly thing when it comes to tree maintenance. We had one of those roughly 100-foot hickories go down in Isaias. It cost a small fortune to get it taken down the rest of the way, especially given that it was on the verge of taking the power lines out, but got caught by another tree before it got a chance to. Anyway, that's more or less the sum of it. It's been a long time since the ordinance has been updated. It might be time for some improvements because it's pretty ancient writing in the existing ordinance, but the current one seems to go too far. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Next, I'm asking Tony, if Tony could give me your last name.
Hi, it's Tony Femia. I live here in Vista. And I agree with everything everyone's been saying. I'm against the ordinance. I think it goes too far. And I don't even know what the need is in such urgency. I live here in town and I'm not seeing any trees be taken out except what needs to be, but I don't need to repeat everything that has been said, but everyone that has spoken prior to me has made very, very valid points, and I concur with them. So thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Next, I'm asking Mark Robbins to unmute.
Good evening. This is Mark Robbins. I'm a homeowner in Vista, New York, and I'm very supportive of the spirit of the ordinance with respect to preserving trees and the many benefits, including carbon sequestration. I wanted to point out particularly the onslaught of trees being attacked by the ash borer beetle and vines. And one of the really preventative maintenance items to somehow think about how this may be part of advice to property owners is trying to address the impact on the trees by vines. And I often see the perimeter of my property, neighbors that aren't aware that the vines are killing the trees, and not just ash trees. And often it's too late. And so just somehow point of reference, if people can be aware that many of the trees we're losing are because of vines. And there's certainly something we can do prophylactically. It's less expensive than paying for tree removal. If we could sort of set up almost a task force or be individually aware of these vines, it's something that we can get out and attack to help preserve our trees. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Next, I'm asking Leah Pizer to unmute.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yes, we can, Leah.
Great. Leah Pizer from Golden's Bridge. Again, like the gentleman before me, love the idea of saving trees. That's great. I know very, very little about trees, but 60 days for a permit is just a ridiculously long time and can actually, I mean, well, I don't want to insult anybody. So anyway, 60 days is a ridiculously long time. Also considering you have no idea how many applications or permits you can expect. And I think that if you are going to be controlling people's ability to cut down trees on their property, you should at least give them a very quick turnaround, as opposed to if we haven't acted within 60 days, it's deemed accepted or whatever the verbiage is. So that needs to be fixed. And the other thing is, if it's around, if a tree can hit my house or can hit my neighbor's house, I should be able to take it down, because I know that the trees that are coming down on my property, and again, maybe it's vines, I don't really know, but they're huge, healthy trees being uprooted from the rains and the winds, and have absolutely knocked down a bunch of trees in Arbor Hills. And I'm not going to wait 60 days if it's could reach my house. So, so I think that has to get figured out. Otherwise, I think there's some issues, some constitutional issues and legal issues and liability that the town doesn't need. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Next, I'm asking George Gavin to unmute.
Okay, hi, it's Charles George. I was just using my son's computer. I'm in Vista. I'm against the tree ordinance as it is now. Listening to the last couple, and especially tonight, there were some really great suggestions. I think from people about some of the trees that are 100 feet from the house. I think Peter from Vista brought that up. And really, that would be, I would say it just needs a little tweaking. Maybe just too broad a stroke for, we all have different areas of the town, as we all keep talking about, that some people are more woody than others, and some people are houses are right next to one another. And then it goes to the building department. Maybe just don't give those guys and everyone who works there any more work to do. We've been hearing this over and over, Ben, about getting permits, and I think they have enough on their plate. And considering they are a business that makes money for the town, you probably want to speed up getting permits. And that's about it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Charles. I have one more hand up. And that is Bob Sworn. Bob, I'm asking you to unmute. Bob, I'm asking you to unmute. No, it's not a telephone. There you are.
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes,
me
we
now?
can, Bob. Mhm.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
We have a healthy 5-figure tree project that is scheduled to commence in about 2 weeks, and it involves many hazardous trees. So basically, the 60-day period for inspection kind of is useless for us at this point in terms of creating extenuating circumstances as far as liability and so forth is concerned. So my question, I guess, to be practical about this is, with whom would I speak over the next few days to get this expedited? Because all the tree companies that we've dealt with over the past couple of months in getting this to this point, they're all booked solid. The quality ones anyway, through I'd say in many cases well into the summer. Any advice from anyone?
So just to know, we don't usually use this forum for, discussing people's individual problems or having a dialogue on these things, but maybe check in offline with your question. And also, it depends on where we end up with this deliberation on the law, right? So I don't know that we have an answer for you right at this very second.
Okay, well, I will follow up offline then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. And that appears to be it. Supervisor Parsons.
Oh, that's it? All right. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 There are a couple of things I'd like to point out beginning the board's discussion, that everybody is entitled to cut 3 trees per acre on their property within any calendar year with no permit. So that takes care of quite a lot of trees. And in addition, no permit is required for any dead tree, hazardous tree, or other tree that creates an actual or ongoing emergency situation. So most of what I've heard is about trees that are dangerous. Trees that are dangerous can be cut down as long as they are genuinely dangerous.
So just to clarify, the 3 trees a year, we do have these other criteria, and one of them is the specimen thing,
But yes,
right?
all right.
So, I mean, that kicks in for a lot of trees. I mean, 18 inches is, yay big. So, just to
granted,
nuance that.
But and if you live in a special character overlay district, it's a lot stricter. So on Elmwood Road, it's a lot stricter. Secondly, I think having listened to a lot of comments, I think we need whenever for anybody who disagrees with the immediate result of getting a reading from the town should bring in an arborist. And I've got a couple who I'm in the process of looking at, and will propose one of them to the board. They would both be brought in on a part-time basis. They both already work for other towns and have got and get a high recommendation from those towns.
So Peter, how would that process work? If we get 10 permits, let's say tomorrow, do we reach out to the arborist and he comes in and then pays a visit to those 10 locations?
Yeah, but we're not going to get 10. I mean, that's pretty amazing if we get 10 applications tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can certainly appoint an arborist by the end of the week.
I have some issues with how it's, as a couple of my board members know, I have a problem with how it's currently drafted. I don't think as it exists, it adequately protects homeowners if they want to remove something close to their home and they assess there being a potential risk. In North Salem, you have the 100-foot buffer if the tree posing a striking hazard within 100 feet of an existing dwelling. I know you have the 3 prohibition in our statute as it exists in the draft. I'm also concerned that it may create an...
You also have the hazardous tree line.
Right, and we talked about that, but the problem is you're getting into, the way it's drafted, you're getting into a problem as to interpreting that. I think that creates an issue. I think that the language has to be tightened up. I'm also concerned about this creating an undue administrative burden for the town based upon, and this was mentioned before, if we have, whether we have an arborist or whoever we bring in as the authority here, I'm concerned about there being both ambiguity and confusion as to what a homeowner has to do if they want to take down trees, if they think there might be a hazardous issue, how they should best handle it. I think there's some confusion. I think it could be addressed. I think it's important to address what needs to be done here, and that's filling something in the law to eliminate clear cutting, preventing clear cutting for smaller lots. So that needs to be addressed, and we need legislation to address that. Just as it's currently drafted, I think we need to borrow a little bit more from what Pound Ridge and/or North Salem has to tighten up the language. That's my opinion. So I think.
Well, if your worry is at all about the time, Pound Ridge goes to the town board, I think, to get permission. And North Salem goes to its planning board, or maybe it's the other way around. And Bedford goes to its planning board.
Right.
I mean,
it's not
those are very long processes.
Right, and we need clarity, and we need an expedited process for homeowners to know what the law is and how it applies to them. It's not setting up additional bureaucracy. We got to find the best way to streamline it and fulfill the intent and meet, which is what we are trying to do here. There's no problem with that. Just the way it's drafted, I have a problem with. I think it creates confusion for homeowners, and it's potentially an undue administrative burden for the town as it's drafted. I think it could be squared away in short order, and we could come back and tighten it up. So I think everybody in the town understands the need to promote, to protect our trees, to ensure that there's no clear cutting. There's no dispute, I don't think, as far as that. But I think that homeowners have to have a little bit more clarity and certainty when an issue comes up. And,
okay, I disagree, I guess.
Well, that's what makes a horse race.
I think there is plenty of clarity in this law as it's written.
I'm willing to take a little more time on it. I know, Peter, you wanted to get.
I want to get it done.
Get it done.
These things drag on, and Dan, you've been around while this has dragged on twice before.
Yeah, but that was different. Last time it was just an outright declaration that this just wasn't, the right thing. It wasn't the time. Now we got people who want to work it out. And I think we will, so I'm not as concerned about that. There's a good intent here. And, I heard enough that I want to listen. I think it's, I agree to some extent that if it's possible for people to come here and not have a clear idea of, where it's going right now, then the language could be tightened up. I mean, I like the idea of clear criteria. The 100-foot rule, I don't know if that's a doable thing for us, but the trees that I supposedly cut down for my solar panels, I mean, 2 were rotten. The one had a completely hollow center, and it was about 8 feet from my house. So, and the other one was rotten also. But I took out a huge pine tree that was about 40 feet from, maybe a little less, but it had like this, the roots were already in like this kind of ball, and it was so huge. And we know how the pine trees tend to be the ones that go and decide, you know what, I don't want to go through the next storm with this right there. So I get it. We want to be safe about it. And I think if we can have some, have a go and let people feel like we really deliberated on how to make this work so people feel safe. The other thing that I'm concerned about the turnaround. And I mean, like, the ideal world is we have an arborist on call and can make the call within a couple of days, because I can imagine that, there are situations where, these things come up pretty quickly, or, to have a tree kind of get in the way of a whole like construction schedule or something that didn't anticipate it, and hang things up could be a scenario. So I don't know. I don't feel that we have to put this to bed today.
Okay, I would like to, but I guess I'm not in the majority here.
I don't know. Let's hear what the others have to say.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to, I spoke to Peter earlier today, so I had a couple of things that I wanted to take a closer look at. I mean, I think the buffer is something that's worth looking at. I know we were looking at improving the administration and getting it away from the wetlands inspector or the or town engineer. But I think we need to have a definitive language as to that. It's very vague right now in terms of the administration.
Well, the administration, yes, is vague because we haven't yet appointed an arborist.
Right. So then, but then there's the question. So will the homeowner submit a permit application to the building department, and building department then calls in the arborist?
All right. I think that is pretty simple to change, but if you wish to, I think that but most of the argument has been about, I guess, nobody seems to understand that they get to choose 3 trees a year. Plus, they get to cut down any tree which is hazardous.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Deemed by, I mean, I think that, it sounds to me like Peter's right. The temperature of the board is that we can take a little longer and make the language tighter. But I also think that these are like a lot of kind of buzzwords for dragging out a process. And, you get to pick 3 trees. That's up to the homeowner. I think that we're overestimating our ability to enforce this. And this is really about not allowing for clear cutting. And a couple of people mentioned that they didn't see that as a problem in town, but I have a different opinion. And I do see it as a problem, the clear cutting. And that people can pick 3 trees. I think they can determine for themselves it's hazardous. If people have perfectly healthy trees that they're really afraid are going to get uprooted and slam into their house, they can take them down. As somebody pointed out, it's really expensive. And somebody said, well, it costs $20,000 for me to do this. Who has that kind of money? The kind of people that we're trying to stop from clear cutting. So, I mean, but at the same time, I appreciate that we take the public input and we want to massage it a little bit and make it a little bit clearer for people. And that's fine too. I just want to make sure that we don't get stuck, we don't get stuck in obstructionist agenda.
Okay, who is going to take on redrafting it? All right, but I want a tough law. This is not going to become a namby-pamby law.
Well, I'm going to utilize the input of our esteemed town attorney to work through that process.
Okay, he wrote this one.
Rich, I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate that you stepped up and had a problem with it and that you're volunteering to take on the work. That I really,
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you, Richard.
well, also, I mean, the fact is what you brought up, Jane, you brought up the concept of clear cutting, which is something that's an issue. The word clear cutting doesn't appear in this statute, this draft.
agreed. I think Peter probably, I think there's probably a reason for that. But
And I was going to ask
once
Greg
you
about
get,
that.
once
The
you've
current-
got more than 3 trees, you've got to get a permit.
Well,
right. So this will replace the existing chapter 203 in the code today.
Yes.
Is that correct, Greg?
That's correct. Correct. It would be a repeal of the existing 203, and whatever you decide to enact would then supplant it.
And we are the only Northern Westchester municipality that does not have a tree ordinance. So we're the anomaly, not the other way around. This is standard practice.
Yeah, I think we can get there. I think, and I really appreciate Rich for helping with this.
Me too.
Okay.
I think we'll nail it down.
If he has a problem with it and he's volunteering to redraft it, great.
I'll put it on the agenda for the next board meeting.
Okay.
It would be
You will have to
great
set a new
if you
public
could
hearing.
keep it as close to this so we didn't have to have another public hearing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the
next one,
process just
I
gets.
think 2 meetings. We have stuff on the 22nd we're addressing. So I think the 8th would work. So we'll get time.
What's on the 22nd?
We have a public hearing on the 22nd.
The
Yes.
police, the police.
The wood burning boilers.
We have a lot
burning
going
boilers.
on the 22nd, right? Like we haven't even created that agenda yet, right? Because I have an agenda item I wanted to propose as well. So
You'll need a reasonably prompt target should be the first meeting in April, and
Okay,
We'll get there.
but then that means you'll be lucky if you get it done in April.
If we,
Because
Fine,
a
Peter,
lot
that's
of the
fine. I
people
think
who
if we get this
oppose
done by
this,
June, the board is fine with that.
okay,
we'll set the hearing next time and then have the hearing. And we
There's gonna
can-
have to be another hearing. There's no way that the language is gonna stay close enough that it's not. So I think we should plan for another hearing. But Peter, if we get this done by June,
No, we should be able to get it done a lot earlier. We should be able to
Yeah.
get it done in April. Absolutely.
April.
Any substantive change at all to any section of it that is substance and not technical, you have to renotice and
we are
reconduct
gonna,
the public
we're
hearing.
gonna have to do
Absolutely.
that. So that's, we have
absolutely.
to incorporate that in the timeline. So we're looking at May, but that's not, I mean, but that's what we decided was fine, right? It's a couple more months. I don't know what the rush is.
How
It's
much,
not a rush,
how much
but in-
notice how much notice do you have to give for a public hearing? I'm not familiar.
2 weeks.
It'll take, 5 days.
Okay.
It'll be
All right,
from
but
from
practically
publication.
2 weeks.
From public, yes.
Okay.
From publication.
Because
There's
we
a lead time.
decide in one meeting to hold a public hearing, and it's 2 weeks before the next meeting.
Okay. So Greg, I'll sit down with you. Hopefully this week we can go over it virtually.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Either way. Yes, thank you, Rich. Appreciate it.
Just so the board knows, the first meeting in April is April 12th.
Thank you.
Gives you time.
Okay. I hope we're not headed down the route of what happened the last 2 times.
No mamby-pamby, Peter. Don't worry.
Third time's a charm.
Little man-by,
We'll do it this time, Peter.
little man-by, but absolutely no pamby. Again.
All right. Public comment period. Does anybody wish to comment, take advantage of the public comment period? Do I have to have a motion to open it? No. So does anybody wish to take advantage of the public comment period?
Right now, there are no hands, but give people a second. If you don't mind.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a while to find the hand icon.
There are no hands for public comment period number 1.
All right, communications. I've got a letter here. We have had several letters over, or I have received several letters from residents praising the various town employees for their work during the snowstorm. I'm going to read one of them. It's addressed to Superintendent Ripperger. During the snowstorm on February 7th, LVAC was called to a residence on Lake Walkabuck to assist a resident who had sustained an injury from a fall. LVAC's volunteers were informed by their dispatchers that the Lewisboro Highway Department was also aware of the situation and had sent a plow to that location to assist in the response. Along the way to the dispatched address, LVAC members encountered 3 different trucks from the town of Lewisboro's Highway Department. All of their operators were coordinating snow removal and working in concert to clear a path for EMS responders coming to help the injured citizen. Upon arrival at the scene, Deputy Superintendent Joe Posadas reported that he had already plowed a large portion of the driveway, clearing the way for responders to access the patient amid the falling snow. It goes on, but it's basically a letter from Dan Murtha on behalf of the Lewisboro Volunteer Ambulance Corps. There is a somewhat similar one praising the work of, wait a second. He's disappeared from my list suddenly. Bill Gray for getting a patient out on a stretcher or helping get a patient on a stretcher out of a home where they'd got a solidly iced set of steps to get the patient down.
And
You're
Bill,
talking
Bill
about
Gray is
police
one of our
officers, right?
part-time police officer.
Yes, a part-time police officer. There is another one about Andrew Llewellyn, not the same one as last time.
Right.
I think we owe a major vote of thanks to our town workers who are out there helping get people into ambulances during the snow. I think they've done a first-class job, and I'm very grateful.
Well, actually, on that point, within my neighborhood in the last month or so, there's been 2 of my neighbors have been taken for different issues where the police responded along with ambulance, and they did a terrific job.
Yeah, makes everybody feel so secure with the folks we have here. It's fantastic.
And as we all know, the police are normally there first because they're on duty the whole time, whereas the other departments, fire and ambulance, are volunteers and have to get to the fire station or the ambulance headquarters in order to begin the run. Next, I'd like to move that we approve the consent agenda, including the minutes of the February 8th meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to open a discussion of the outdoor wood burning boiler law that we are proposing to have a public session. I think we've already set a public hearing, but do you want, I gather there is some wish to change it.
Yes. So yeah, maybe I could just kick this off. So we we had a discussion. Dan and I were invited to a call with Nancy Alderman, who's president of Environment and Human Health, which is a consulting company that consults organizations about the environment and about its impacts to human health. So a lot of good information on the effects of smoke to people, and especially around outdoor wood boilers. And the recommendation that she provided is that these systems should be banned. And they are banned in surrounding towns. And so one of the things that we were looking to address is how can we potentially ban it? We can certainly ban it outright. But one of the ideas in talking to Greg was, rather than do that, maybe set a sunset provision where they will be banned after a certain period of time. We still have, for those who do have an outdoor wood boiler today, this new code allows for our building department to provide the enforcement. And if they are in violation to the permitted fuel, for example, which is seasoned wood, their permit can be pulled and the wood boiler taken out of service until they mitigate. So I guess the point here is, do we want to go forward with putting in a provision that will eventually ban outdoor wood boilers in town?
Greg, what do we need by way of a sunset provision?
If you're going to ban them, prospectively, meaning at some period in the future, I would recommend at least the end of 2022. You have an 18-month window or so between the time you conceivably pass it, maybe a little more, and the time to ban. The immediate ban is, to me, that's from a litigation perspective, that's problematic. I think you're going to be the target of litigation for the owners who use it.
You don't think the sunset permitted? You don't think the sunset provision could be any shorter than that?
I think you're going to get litigation regardless if there's any type of all-out, out-and-out ban. You can enact whatever you like. Sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
A sunset provision, would that mean that people that legally have a wood burner now would have to get rid of it within 18 months?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
whatever you decide in terms of a time frame.
Or 2 years,
I
3
think Greg's
years,
been
6
really
months.
clear that he thinks that that's a litigation issue for the town if we don't have a sunset provision. I've heard that clearly, so yeah.
Can I also remind that there's a litigation possibility on the other side of the spectrum, which I think is quite possibly and very reasonably, in terms of weighing the mutual liabilities, is a worse one.
Except that the litigation would be against the person with the boiler. It would be a civil suit.
I think this has come. I'm sorry. I don't know. This has come up a couple times. First is if you have no legislation in place, one way or the other, there's not a liability issue for the town in terms of the any damages caused to private property or private individuals. The people certainly have private rights of actions for nuisance, and they absolutely have those rights. But the town is not liable for enforcing or failing to enforce a law that it doesn't have on the books. And in all candor, once a law gets on the books, I drafted something today just with respect to another matter, but the concept is the same. The failure to discharge a ministerial duty does not make the town liable in negligence. So if in fact the law is on the books for whatever it is, if you have a sunset provision or if you don't, or it's just a matter of general enforcement for types of fuel that you're burning and months of operation, and you don't enforce it, you can be people can try and enforce your obligation. But in terms of damages to people who are sustained either damage to life or property or whatever, you're not liable for that in the absence of a special relationship being formed between some town agent or employee and a particular plaintiff. So and Dan, I respect what you're saying. There's a lot that gets said during the course of this, and I was here in December, and I want you to understand where the liabilities are.
That.
Okay.
So,
and I'm not saying.
So the liability on the other side, what's the extent of that? There's compensation for the boiler or something like that, or
if in fact you were to phase them out or legislate them out, I mean that individual has a right that they're currently exercising, and the law then takes away that right. So how do you calculate the liability? If in fact they prevail, that whatever the measure of the benefit of that unit is for some period of time, it's very speculative. I just know you're going to get. I don't say no. I'm certain you're going to get litigation.
I think it depends on the person. And
sure.
my sense is that maybe the folks who are involved in this are in the same way they kind of don't want to have to do with the regulation side. I'm not sure if they want to get involved in lawyers and all that too. But that's why I'm just trying to look at what the outside harm is, because frankly, I mean, just to be out there, like, this is something that's hurting people, and if I had an opportunity to just go ahead and fix it at this point, like, the alternative is like, well, because apparently our other agencies are not really acting with any kind of expeditiousness, and they're being very cautious and very like, well, let's give them some advice and let's come back again and let's see what's going on. And I just feel like we could fix this. There'll be some liability. We might get sued because somebody wants to have a boiler, what's the outside range of liability on that side of things.
Is there a difference, maybe I'm splitting hairs, is there a difference, Greg, between a sunset provision for the utilization of the boilers and getting from now until whatever time it is sunset provision? Because if people are creating a nuisance from here to there, what can you do to ameliorate the adverse environmental impact before the sunset time?
Well, part of that would be in the scope of the regulatory part of the law. Okay, there is a provision for stack height. There is a provision for months of burning. There is provisions for types of fuel you can burn. And I just wanted to point out that the way that it's written now, nobody will be able to replace their burners. So if it only lasts 5 years, or their boilers, then that's it, or they can't repair it beyond 50% of its value. If you're able to determine that, and if it's at a service for more than 7 months, it's deemed abandoned. So there are provisions here that do effectively attempt to ultimately do away with them, but it's not some immediate ban that goes in on X date that you're just prohibited from using them. Okay, so
a lot of the complaints that we've heard have been about burning of stuff other than wood, seasoned wood. And that is, I think, what accounts for the terrible, apparently, odor and smoke coming out of this thing. Yet, this code says that seasoned wood is all you are allowed to burn. I don't think it would be too hard to provide evidence that something other than seasoned wood was being burned, and to take it to the building inspector to issue a warrant to take the guy to court.
Notice of violation, order to remedy, something along those lines. Yeah.
And that's what I see happening because of this law.
And then he turns around, he burns some good stuff for a day, and then he turns around and like 2 days later, the reports start coming again.
The neighbors, we know that from the neighbors.
And just to be clear, what's being burned today, or what's being utilized today, is not this outdoor wood boiler. It's the indoor wood stove. So that's
well, that is not tackled at all by this legislation.
Right. That one is being handled. There are laws with the county health department. They're basically they're the enforcement agency at this point, and they can escalate to DEC if needed.
So we were sent a link today to the Pound Ridge Code, and they had some pretty in the weeds detail about the smoke and determining whether something was acceptable or not that we don't have here. I'm looking for it. I had it open. I'm trying to find it.
Like particulate matter, Dan? Like certain particulate matter within the
yeah, and it
exhaust?
was using a specific instrument. I don't know, Ringler or something or other.
Now, the problem with that is we don't have one of those instruments, and neither, I suspect, do the neighbors. I think one of them may.
Well, no, I'm sorry. It's the Ringelman smoke chart, which I think is what Tony and those officials went out, and basically you hold it up and compare it to some scale or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
It's an opacity measurement, I think they call it, right? I didn't read the Pound Ridge. I saw the email, but I didn't get a chance to read it.
That's essentially measuring the environmental impact to know if it goes over a certain standard or something.
Right. If the smoke is at a certain density, in fact, DEC at one point when I was there with the DEC person, he mentioned, that smoke. He didn't have the instrument with him, but he saw that it had a certain density that he thought would be in violation of current permission.
But he was not prepared to come back and do anything.
Do we know what following it through
back to the health department, because that's where it starts.
Do we know what the cost of that instrument would be? Because let's say it's not prohibitive, and a neighbor was using that instrument to support a complaint of a violation of the law, and then followed up that way.
Yeah, well, the neighbors do have other instruments that they've been using to measure smoke on their property, and have shown us charts where it compares the readings to other areas around the state and the country.
Is that enough to support the issuance of a violation under applicable law as it stands?
I guess if we incorporate that in our law, right, the readings from that particular instrument.
Right. We don't have the specifics for that type of quantifiable either presence in the air or the exhaust of whatever the particulate matter is within this code. I think that it's difficult to enforce those. Everything you do here with respect to an enforcement measure, you have to be able to establish it by non-hearsay allegations tending to prove each and every element of the offense that you're charging. And those are it's difficult with respect to enforcement personnel and maybe instrumentation too.
Yeah.
But you have to write it so that it's enforceable, because that's where it'll go ultimately if there's a violation.
But right now we have, with this code that we're reviewing for the outdoor wood boiler, the enforcement will be with us, right? It's with the town, with the building department. But with the wood burning stoves in use inside the home, the health department already has enforcement and processes for handling that.
Maybe it's
There is also, I gather, at least one other person with an indoor wood boiler in the area, and there are no complaints about him at all.
Right.
Maybe it's a bad analogy, but I don't know if we have a noise ordinance in town, do we? So if somebody's complaining that there's too much noise, is there a way to, I guess, enforce that if somebody's making a complaint, if you don't measure?
Yeah, our
decibel?
noise standard doesn't have an actual decibel level, I think. It's just, I believe it's one of those, if a reasonable person.
Yeah, it's
deems it to
reasonable.
be-
Well, can we take something like that here?
Yeah.
For what? For the indoor wood burning stoves?
Well, if a
Or
reasonable
general, for
person,
any
meaning a
stove?
neighbor, makes a complaint based upon certain, environmental problem, is that enough? Can that be enough so that we have a way to address the issue from now until when the sunset provision kicks in?
Oh, so you're referring to the outdoor wood boiler?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's a problem now with the wood stove, just because you just move the fuel into another device, then maybe we have to capture that as well. Because the way it's written right now, he'd
It's
be
strictly
okay.
outdoors.
Yeah, I mean, so I think
Now, Tony, what do you know about what they're doing at the moment and whether it is as obnoxious as it was before?
Yeah, so I'm still getting reports that the smoke is from the indoor wood burning stoves. It's still thick smoke, very dense smoke at times. But again, I know the health department has been called. I'm not sure what the result of that was. I know Stacy and Robert are on. They have their hands up. I don't know if you want to let them say a few words or wait for public comment, but I actually had asked Stacy about whether she had any feedback from the county health department as a result of the last report or complaint. Didn't hear back yet.
Stacy, why don't you tell us?
Where's
All right.
I guess I'll I don't know, Janet? Is Janet here?
Yep, I asked her to unmute.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
Yep.
Stacy.
Hi. I actually prepared a very short PowerPoint so that people would know what an outdoor wood boiler was. I don't know if you want me to present it now or just answer that specific question, because I have a feeling many people don't know what we're talking about.
No, I think the critical issue is just like this enforcement issue, right? And there is an authority out there today that supposedly should be able to help us and has not. So it's like, we'd like to know more about your experience with that.
So
I'd also like to know about your experience. Apparently you got county health in.
That's what I meant.
To take. And what?
But
and
Dan,
what
that
did
was
they
not for
find
the
and
outdoor.
what did they get back to you with?
County health was for the indoor stove, not the outdoor.
Yes,
wood
for the
boiler.
indoor.
Correct.
Well, that's what I'm
Yeah.
interested in at the moment.
Yes.
Okay, so in summary, last August was when we initiated the complaint with the town, and DEC got involved. DEC was going to come out and take the opacity readings, which Tony mentioned, and the DEC asked me to alert them
to keep a log so that they could come out and take the readings. So I started keeping the logs, but unbeknownst to me, the town had asked the resident to stop using the outdoor wood boiler. So week after week, I'm like, well, where's the smoke? It's nothing, there's nothing to report. So that's why the DEC never was able to take the opacity readings. And that's why the DEC ended their, that's where they felt they had the authority. The root of the problem, as Mr. Parsons pointed out, is the source of what's being burned. He has burned items that were illegal in the outdoor wood boiler, as recognized by DEC Officer Tompkins, who found illegal items in the boiler. The homeowner himself has informed me in an email that he had burned old landscape items, fence parts, etc. So we know that these units are notorious for illegal burning. However, he also receives free wood, which he moved to his indoor stoves. And so this problem has now shifted and is wreaking havoc to all the neighbors up and down our street. People have complained as far down as the corner of Todd and Flintlock. So really the source of this whole issue is having him burn seasoned wood. The DEC went out, an engineer, and very nicely informed him about what wood to burn, how to measure the wood. They bought an instrument. Tony went out. The health department went out. Everybody has been going out trying to help him understand what needs to be done. But he's not only proved indifferent, but almost defiant. He'll burn at 6 a.m. I work, unfortunately, at 6 a.m. I'm up at 6, and my house happens to overlook his property. And he'll burn, he'll probably stop for the day. So like Peter Parsons pointed out, he burns intermittently now. Yes, it's improving now that eyes are on him. And I did purchase that air monitor that the DEC recommended. And once he saw those readings, it's improved since then as well. Those air monitors are used all over the world. The New York Times did a story on them that they were used in India. And the DEC and the health department, the state health department, not the one located in Mount Kisco, but also uses those monitors in a lot of their projects as well.
We should be aware, people,
of the health department's the latest complaint, which was last month.
So I spoke to the woman at the health department and told her that I would text her on a time, to come up. And there were certain hours that she asked me to text her within. And during that time period, he did not have the smoke on. So I didn't text her. So, there has been an improvement. I mean, we're moving forward. I think all of your calls placed to him, Tony, have
Wait
helped.
a second. That's what I'm going to do.
Okay. Well, glad that helped. But yeah, so in terms of enforcement with the wood burning stove inside the house, so it sounds like that's under control to a certain degree.
It's improving. It's
Right.
improving.
And
We're
we'll
talking
keep an eye on that. And
relatively large number of people.
Peter, I'm just gonna mute him. Okay. But so I think the issue now is, we have this new law with regards to the outdoor wood burning boilers, and that's what I think we should focus on now, and make a decision. Do we need to edit what's here, or and then enact it? And I think that's a decision we need to make specific to the outdoor wood boiler. Peter, you're on mute.
Peter, you're muted.
Peter, you're still muted.
Hold on, where Joel's, as the host, has to unmute him now.
Okay.
We muted him.
We're asking you to mute.
I'm trying to.
There you go.
Oh, I've done it.
Okay, yep.
Be aware that if we're going to go to indoor boilers, we've got a completely different type of issue on our hands.
So, but we're not talking about indoor.
Okay, because there are a considerable number of indoor boilers in town.
Right, so the focus of this chapter 165 is the outdoor.
Yes, and
Well,
I
in the case
think
of the
that this
indoor, it's
law is
not,
about
not
it.
a boiler.
What?
In the case of the indoor, it's very rarely, maybe no,
Okay.
it's not a boiler. It's a fireplace, just or a wood stove.
Actually, it is a boiler.
Overhead with the-
There is someone that we spoke to, one of the candidates for the steering committee, Master Plan Steering Committee, actually had mentioned he has a dual fuel wood boiler that he uses for heating. And it works off oil and wood, but it doesn't generate any smoke.
So does an indoor
And
boiler,
Dan, take a stroll round Lake Kitchewan.
does
Mm-hmm.
does an indoor boiler, stove, fireplace, whatever, require seasoned wood to be burned?
I don't think there are any laws about it. I don't know.
There aren't any laws, but I'm sure the manufacturer's guidelines require that you burn certain seasoned wood.
Hey,
I would think.
guys, in order to move this forward, all I'm saying is don't let's go down the rabbit hole of indoor boilers. But
Right.
I think this is as good a way of trying to stop the burning of non-seasoned wood, which is what apparently we're after, as we can do at the moment. And I know Tony had some way he wanted to amend it, but I still wanted to basically say, if you're burning non-seasoned wood, you're breaking the law.
Right, and
So,
your permission
and
to
so
use it gets
my
repealed.
question is, so my question is, you're going to, leave all the indoor burning devices out of this? So, because that's
Yes.
actually what the
Yes.
problem is.
We are not
What's that?
talking about, we're not talking about indoor like we are talking a lot about them, but that's not, I don't know, like, we're not talking about that. We're talking about like the outdoor wood boilers and whether or not we want to ban them with the sundown, or if they're not using seasoned wood to be able to.
Okay, I get that. I understand that's what we are talking about. I'm just saying, like, there is currently a problem which includes the burning of, bad wood. It just happens to be inside now. So the problem is just moving inside. And would it be that difficult to change this law to make it, give it another title? And the first part is like, in any type of, fireplace or wood stove or boiler that uses wood, you have to use seasoned wood. And then the rest of it is all the stuff about the outdoor units. If you think that's like gonna just bog this all down, fine. I'm just saying that, like, currently, apparently that's the problem.
Right, but it's being managed, and we have an enforcement agency, which is the Department of Health.
Okay. Fine, if you think it's
my
adequate.
thought.
Yeah.
So what I'd really like to do is to pass this law as it stands, because from what I've heard, it is unlikely that the people using with an outdoor boiler, wood burning boiler, are going to cease using it. And we know very well that they've got a tendency to burn stuff that we would prefer them not to burn. That, by legislating against that, I think is our best chance of controlling that issue. It is not, I agree, controlling the indoor issue, but we don't know very much about the indoor issue, quite honestly.
Greg, you're comfortable with us passing the legislation as currently drafted?
I am, with respect to its content and what it provides for enforcement guidelines and the use of them. I think what Dan's speaking about and Tony's speaking about falls more into Part 211 of the DEC regulations, which is pollution in general. Okay, which is from any source, whatever. And it's fairly terse and brief, but it basically, deals with a harm to human life or quality of life standard for a given type of emission, and that would certainly cover indoor fireplaces, wood burning stoves, indoor boilers that use other types of fuel. So, but your public hearing is the 8th, I believe. Sorry, is it 22nd?
The 22nd.
Today's the 8th. Okay, so I think that this provides you with a reasonable amount of enforcement capability, and protects you on the backside with what I would be concerned about an outright ban. But it is your prerogative for the ban.
All right, so we'll have the public hearing on the 22nd and move to passage then.
Yes, that's what I want to do.
Sounds good.
I want to get something on the books as quickly as we can,
Sounds good.
rather than nothing. I'd like to make a motion to set, oh, I already have set the public hearing for the 22nd, so I don't have to do anything.
And we said it.
I don't know, Peter, Robert Whitaker also has his hand up. I don't know if we want to wait for the public comment. I think we've.
That can wait, I think, till the next public.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, Robert, let's wait till public comment.
I'd like to move on to the public employer health emergency plan. Does anybody have any comments on this? As you know, we have to have it in Albany on the 1st. The thing where we're in trouble, quite honestly, or maybe not in trouble, is that our unions, only one of the 3 unions has been responsive.
But your obligation is to give the unions, the collective bargaining units, a chance to comment on it, and you have to respond to the comments within a reasonable time. You're stuck under the.
We've given them a chance, and it's reasonable, presumably, because one of them has responded.
Your mandate under Labor Law 27C is to have it passed. I honestly think that if you pass it and you respond to any comments you receive after, you're still in compliance. Your deadline is your deadline for.
Okay. Does anybody want to make comments about it on the board, or shall I simply propose that we adopt it?
I reviewed it and provided my feedback to Mary, so I don't have any comment.
All right, I'd like to.
Captures a lot of what we're already doing, correct? So
yes, it's based very much on what we have done, and it could be argued with some considerable success, touch wood, granted that no town employee has got the virus. I think we've done pretty well.
So you're moving to adopt the legislation?
I'm moving, it isn't legislation, just moving, resolving that we should adopt this emergency plan for the town of Lewisboro and forward it to the state.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Next one. Would you like to take this one? What?
Oh, you skipped Golden's Bridge.
I've skipped Golden's Bridge. Sorry, I thought it was something else. Where are you, Jonathan? Jonathan,
if you could raise your hand, please.
Is Jonathan aware of the nursery rhyme which begins,
Yeah.
Jonathan, Jonathan, Jonathan?
See him?
Hi, buddy.
Okay. Yeah, I'm asking him to unmute. And can you make him a co-host, Joe?
All right. Janet, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And
Okay.
we're making you a co-host so you can share your screen.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And is it possible also later to unmute the other trustees, just in case I've left something out of the presentation?
We can unmute them. We won't make them co-hosts.
Right.
And you can just ask them to raise their hand when you're done.
Okay. All right, so I will share my screen now. Thank you to the board for letting us present tonight. Just to let the audience know that I'm Jonathan Monty from Golden's Bridge, specifically Wild Oaks. And I'm here tonight on behalf of the Golden's Bridge Hamlet Organization. I'm the chair of the GBHO. The trustees are Mickey Denicola, Tony Gonsalves, Jim Morio, Jody Shearer, and Polly Wong is part of this proposed project as well. So we are looking to create a pocket park and a preserve in Golden's Bridge. So we are looking to create this small pocket park and also to rehabilitate a parcel, not a parcel, the pond area in Wild Oaks. So if you look at the screen, you'll see I've circled the proposed site, which is an abandoned foundation. The town owns this entire property. It's commonly referred to the Stein property. The reason why we're looking to create a park here is because of the fact that this area is busy. It's busy with people who walk, joggers, cyclists, families with strollers, and it would create a public gathering space in Golden's Bridge. There is no public gathering space in Golden's Bridge, and that's what we're looking to create now.
Jonathan, do you know the dimensions you're talking about within the parcel? I didn't see that.
Oh, of what we're looking to use?
Yes.
Specifically, this circled area really is just the foundation.
Okay.
So that way it would really be the foundation and some others, some pathways as well, potentially. So we're really looking to disturb really none of the land, but really most of the work that we'd be doing, really all the work we'd be doing would be on the foundation itself.
Right. So is this still in two? I know that the total Stein property was 7 acres and it's
7 acres.
Yes. It's two tax map parcels. Is that right? Okay. It was merged. I don't know.
It's all zoned as one parcel.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. Does my cursor show up?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So for those of you that don't know this area, this is Route 138 running west to east, and this is Fairmount running south to north. Here we have community-based services, which is a group home. And over here we have Katona Close, a neighborhood right near the site. Over here to the right, we have a map that I lifted from Jan Johansson's report with regards to this site as well. So in the pink area, for those that don't know, this is a wetlands area, and you can see the pond right here, community-based services, Katona Close, and we would be looking to really work on work with the foundation, which is right here. Again, and it's adjacent to steep slope. It's not in the wetlands, but it's in the buffer area of the wetlands, and we would be staying really just on the foundation itself. So that's just an overhead view. Just to let folks in the audience know, Wild Oaks has over 205 houses. We have community-based services here as well. Again, a group home for adults who are developmentally disabled. And also adjacent to Wild Oaks, on the other side of 138, is the Colony, which has, I believe, over 110 homes. And just down the road, east of this site, you have Manor Drive and Todd Hill Circle, which each have, in total, they have over 50 homes as well. So we're looking at a densely populated area near our proposed park. Now, just to give the audience some more perspective before we get into specifics, again, we're looking at Fairmount Road, south to north, and I'm pointing to a sycamore tree here, which is where we would be working. This would be the foundation where we would like to put in the small park. Also, if you could please note the telephone pole. This is an abandoned telephone pole, and I'm bringing this up. The telephone pole goes with the property. Whoever owns the property owns the telephone pole. As part of our enhancement to the property, we would like to use this telephone pole to put on bird houses, bee houses, bat houses to attract more wildlife. And we have entered into talks with the Bedford Audubon Preserve, and they would be in favor of adding houses as well as shelters for birds as well on this property. Now, moving over to the picture on the right, here's the foundation itself. It's a level piece of concrete about 20 feet from the road. And right opposite it, you can see the Katona Close neighborhood, again, to give you perspective. And here, this is Fairmount Road running from south to north. The foundation is close to the road. It would be easily accessible for people who walk by here. And it's really, you're not tramping off into the woods. It's really just something close. It will be a close gathering spot. Moving on ahead. So when you're on the foundation itself, and the foundation doesn't look pretty at the moment, but again, we as GBHO see this piece of infrastructure that's been abandoned as a potential asset. It's already been built. We don't need to really do too much to it, and it would end up being an asset to the community. But getting back to the foundation here, when you're on the foundation, you would look out into the wetlands area here, and this is full of birds in the springtime, chickadees, cardinals, blue jays. There's a heron, there are a couple of heron that live in the pond as well. And this past year, we've had mallard ducks in the pond. And that's what I'm pointing to here in the background. You have the pond as well. And then further back, you have 138, again, to give perspective. So it would be a nice compact area for people to gather on and also to enjoy nature as well. Now, getting us closer to the foundation, here you are on Fairmount. And again, it's only about 20 feet to get to the concrete pad itself. And this was the sycamore tree that I was pointing to before. So here, this is a closer shot, a better shot of the concrete pad and the back wall as well. Again, close to the road, easy access for people. And this, we would be working with the local trail builder. I won't mention him by name, but I think everyone can guess who I'm talking about. We would look to build just a short pathway about 20 feet using wood chips to connect the roadway to the foundation itself. So again, it would be simple. It would be in harmony with the area. We wouldn't be using anything that is permanent or impervious to water.
Jonathan, just like you did on Anderson, right?
Exactly. It would be exactly like Anderson Lane, where we would, it would be about a 6-inch pile of wood chips, about 72 inches wide, lined on either side with branches of varying diameters, probably from anywhere from 3 up to 5 inches, and they would be staked in. And the depth of 6 inches allows for settling, and it also end up killing any grass that could potentially grow up through it. So again, it doesn't look like much, but we as an organization see this abandoned foundation as a net benefit, as an asset to the community. And then let's get onto that foundation. So really here you can see it's a lovely piece of concrete that all it really needs is a good sweeping. It needs to have the leaf litter removed. And I've been making a pile of trash on it. I've been collecting trash while I go through the woods. So it would just need the leaves removed. There's a layer of soil that's has begun to form on it as a result of runoff. But again, we see the potential. This wall here is lovely because it can act as a seating area. It's about at the height of a chair, so you could sit on it. And it's really a rather big spot that's just waiting to be utilized. And this was the steep slope that I was talking about before. So you can see that this is really, as Jan Johansson had pointed out, this is really an unbuildable parcel now because of the fact it falls within the wetland zone and you have this steep slope behind it. So again, it's not much to view. It's really just a picture of beige overall, but this is what we envision. So we envision ornamental plantings that are native to enhance the site. We would just like to add a few benches as well to bring people in as a spot to sit, to relax, to look at the pond and the wildlife. We would also like to add in an additional feature to bring people in. It doesn't have to be a message board that looks like this. This would just be an example. It could be something like a little free library. It could just be a board that just posts what wildlife is present in the area. But we do want to have one other feature that brings people to this spot. So that's really what our vision is for the concrete pad. What we're looking to do is to do as little as possible to upset the environment. We do understand that the board has been, that this is in the present mind of the board to possibly swap this land with the DEP. We would just look to attach benches to the concrete, and we would look to put in a board that would just be made of either cedar or untreated wood into the ground. So really, we're looking for no invasion into the habitat itself. And if need be, we could even attach the board to the concrete pad, and it wouldn't end up even being in the soil as well. But really, that's our vision. Excuse me. That would be our vision of the pocket park. So it's an element to bring people in a densely populated part of town that's busy with people on foot, on bicycle as well. Another feature that I did not put in would also be, and it would be off to the side here somewhere else. We haven't exactly determined where yet. We would also like to put in a compost bin of some type, and that would also serve the community. Many people in Wild Oaks do not have a backyard in which to compost. Some people like myself have a very small backyard. So it would end up helping to serve the community as well as a place to put their food scraps in and have it return to nature. So that's our vision for the concrete pad. Now with the fun comes some of the work as well. With our project, we will commit to cleaning up the property. When the house was demolished, some of the debris was left behind. As you can see, this piece of fencing you can see from Fairmount Road, we would either get rid of that or potentially repurpose it with in the compost bin as part of the compost bin, not being composted itself. The wood still appears to be good. We'd like to get rid of the rubble that was part of the house. So there are piles of brick and cinder block as well that we'd like to get rid of. And further up the hill, there are other pieces of home life that were thrown into the woods. There's part of a refrigerator, there's part of a couch as well, and you can see the metal framing here. We would like to get rid of that. And all of that, we would end up just really what we would do is just stage it all at the corner of the property in the Fairmount Road. And we would hope to work with either the highway department or the maintenance department for pickup with that.
Jonathan, is it plausible to have a walking path around that pond?
That is an idea that we were considering as well. We would have to talk with the wetlands inspector as well to ensure that we wouldn't be encroaching in wetlands. But that was part of our larger project, that we would like to have a pathway that would go from the staircase, that picture that I had shown, and I'll just go back. We would like to have a pathway that would go from, this is a staircase down, and we would like to bring a pathway around to the edge of the pond to about here on Route 138, and then you would just turn around and come back. That would be that's another idea as well.
So that, John, I was just gonna, you just stated it, but that is Route 138 down at the end there?
Yes, this is Route 138 behind, you can see the pond right here.
Right.
This is Route 138.
So this possible future path would go around the pond?
It would go, let's say, down the staircase to the left here, around the pond, and then really ending at Route 138 or just before 138, and then you would come back. Unfortunately, we cannot create a pathway that would go around the pond. The pond really edges up to Route 138. It really comes very close to 138. So the ideal would have been to have a pathway go all the way around the pond, but it would just end up just being, let's say, a spur. It could end up taking foot traffic off Route 138 into the to the pocket park.
Right.
So this sounds really, really nice. And you already sort of touched on what would have been my question in a sense, like in the event, like some amazing thing happens around with this, you know, the legendary DP swap and everything, and then, you know, it's possible that you know, this usage would not be a part of that. I mean, I think the prospects of that sort of, you know, are not really, really high, but, you know, just you guys would have the understanding that it's not out of the question that something happens in the future.
Well, no, we do have that in the front of our minds. Also, DEP does allow for passive usage of their property. So, no, we do have that in the front of our minds. We also have the knowledge that DEP does allow for certain usage of their property. We would be hopeful that the if there was a land swap, that potentially this could be an easement on the property as well.
Sure. Yeah.
And even if not, this could potentially even be a pocket park that exists only for a certain specific period of time, that if in 5 or 10 years the swap goes through and DEP would want the park, let's say, dismantled, then, you know, we are understanding of that as well. Now,
oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Yes, Peter, I'm sorry.
I thought you'd finished.
No, the other part of this project is the pond itself. And I'm not going to speak as an expert, for I am not. There are 2 invasives that we know of that we would like to address. One of them is duckweed. If you drive past this pond in the late spring and summertime, the pond looks like it's a bright green, a really an unnatural green. And commonly everyone thinks, oh, it's algae. Actually, it's not. It's something called duckweed. And when you see duckweed on the pond, it's not very pleasing, and it's not necessarily the worst, but it is an invasive. And what it is doing is it's not allowing sunlight to get into the pond, which disrupts the natural flow of the pond in terms of the animals and the plants that are in there. And believe it or not, the pond, as I had mentioned before, is home to heron and to mallards, but there are largemouth bass in there. There are frogs and there are crayfish as well. And with those creatures come insects. So it is an environment that has animals in it. We would like to enhance it and bring it back to its natural state by remediating the duckweed that is on top of the pond. And also Suzanne Cahill from Bedford Audubon Preserve, when she had come out in January when we were talking about the project, she was noticing the Phragmites, which really go around the pond and they parallel Route 138 and they come to about here. So I said to her, well, what do we do about them? And she said, the best bet would be to stem the tide. Really, you can't take them all on because they are invasive and they have deep root. What you want to do is to stop them from progressing any further. So here, this is pretty much where they end at the present time. So we would, put forth our efforts here. And again, we are not going to we wouldn't take the duckweed and the Phragmites removal without professional consultation, because again, none of us are experts in this area. And the last part to our project is we would like to have the site recognized as a wildlife habitat through the National Wildlife Federation. And really what you need is, as it states, water, food, cover for a place to raise young, as well as sustainable practices. And under the sustainable practices falls the removal of invasives as well. So it would be a positive mark on the site, and it would hopefully be aspirational for other people as well, because this certification doesn't only is not only for parks and preserves. Anybody's backyard or could end up being a certified wildlife habitat as well. So that would be the last part of our project to acquire that certification.
I think that's a very excellent and attractive presentation. I've got a couple of questions.
Yes.
One, I know that absolutely nothing has happened on the land swap, but I think there is a new energy in the shopping center, which you're probably aware of.
Yes.
And I think it may well be that new energy is a lot more interested in the swap with DEP, sorry. In order to make that really attractive to DEP, the town needs to retain the option to develop that land. So that needs to be written into any agreement between the town and yourselves that the town does have the right to develop that land. I know you don't like that, but I think that's got to stay there.
But I think that part of the land that Jonathan is focusing on is not developable.
Yeah, except that there is
6 acres. Yeah, it's the acreage behind it.
Can you cut it out?
It appears, again, I'm not someone who
I mean, when I got a plan to develop it, it was a plan to develop the whole piece of land with either 1 or 2 homes.
Right, and I think the recommendation from our engineer at the time was 1 home up at the very top, up the hill, up Fairmont.
Yeah, but let's say we go for 2. All I'm saying is I don't know what we would go for, but it could be some form of very like the Golden's Bridge Community House.
Mm-hmm.
The second comment I'm going to make is kind of not so serious. I just caution you against creating an attractive place for bears, raccoons, and skunks with your composting.
That noted, and that's been in discussion as well. That would be
I even managed to attract rats with when I was composting, which caused an abrupt shutdown at the command of my wife.
One other thing I did fail to mention, not only would we take on building and installing as well as maintaining the site, we would also we would maintain it on an annual basis. So I did want to make mention of that. And we do have support from, I reached out to the neighbor to the east just to let people know.
Oh, I'm sure you do. I would guess you have support from everybody.
Yeah, so from the Golden Bridge Community Association, Bedford Audubon Preserve, we've had support from neighbors in Katona Close as well. I also wanted to put that out there as well, that there is.
Because it's a very attractive proposal. I'm not denying that for a second. I'm just saying that anything we can do to save the Golden's Bridge Shopping Center is something we need to do at the moment, because if that dies on us, we've got a real problem over in Golden's Bridge.
So, Peter, let's say we can't just carve out that piece that's closest to Fairmont.
I don't know.
Okay.
How attractive is that to DEP? I don't know.
Okay.
Would it be possible, as I had made mention of, just an easement, because of the fact that really what we're looking to do is really just install 2 items in effect, or actually 3 items on an existing concrete pad. I mean, we could even just limit it to work on the concrete pad that's already existing on site. So I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but I did want to put that out there so that we would just basically putting in a couple of benches and one other feature, strictly just smoothing.
And
I think we are getting out ahead of ourselves, because to the extent that like we haven't had this negotiation with the DEP, and the DEP's, you know, main concern is going to be about getting you know, value or getting compensation, you know, that they can live with internally. So it's maybe not so much about, you know, easements here and there, but just to put together a whole package which works for everybody. And we have no idea what that'll ultimately look like just yet. So I think it's just a matter of like, okay, be prepared. We don't know where exactly that's all going yet.
That's, Dan, you've got it. I just don't know where that is going. And I want to allow it. And I think, rightly or wrongly, my biggest priority is to try to improve that shopping center significantly.
Well,
and in order, I think the whole of Golden's Bridge would benefit from that. I think one of the first things
So I'm hopeful that Jonathan's speculation pans out, that the DP can take ownership in, you know, if that's part of the whole total package, take ownership of that, you know, nominally, and allow an easement for this activity as not, you know, diminishing their, you know, the value to them for their purposes. So that would be
because as you all probably know, the ANP, it's no longer ANP, Acme lease is ending. So there is a huge opportunity for Steve Sipes to redevelop that entire area. And
when does the lease end, Peter? Do you know?
I don't exactly, but I gathered it was about a year.
Wow. I mean, this obviously all fits in also with the master plan, like work timing wise. So that's a good thing.
I'm hoping,
you know,
I'm hoping that these are not mutually exclusive possibilities. I've been talking about the possibility of having a pocket park at that area, probably going back probably at least 15 years in town board meetings. I think it furthers it furthers a whole bunch of interests, helps to invigorate the Wild Oaks neighborhood, which I have lived in for 23 years myself. It furthers the concepts of what Dan's been talking about for a long time, and Jonathan, the concept of connectivity in Golden's Bridge. And also just the thought, instead of the composting, based upon what Peter said, maybe there's an opportunity for a small garden.
Take that with a slice of humor. I don't know how many bears you've got wandering around Golden's Bridge.
There have been.
Oh, there's been some.
On Green.
Okay, well,
right on my.
They love anything which looks like food.
So what do we want to do? Do we want to take a vote on whether we're in favor of allowing GBHO to proceed with this?
What I want them to do is to come to us with an agreement which will allow the town to retain the option to develop the Fairmont property or the Stein property.
Okay, so you want GBHO to write an agreement?
Oh, we will write the agreement if you like.
I think it doesn't have to be very complicated. It's, you know,
basically giving us
proposal, you know, with the following, you know, criteria, caveats, whatever.
Okay, so that would be our next step. Okay. And
would you prefer, actually, why don't we write it? It's probably easier.
Greg.
And I'll get Greg to write it.
I think
Ken, I just need to know the specific parameters of what the interests are in terms of what, are you taking a piece of it and designating and dedicating it as a pocket park and retaining the interest in it there's something else that you're looking to do in terms of,
I think that's
you know,
it.
some termination date
Yeah.
or, you know, for some defined period?
It's
Is
not
it
as much a
perpetual,
termination. Well, it's
perpetuity?
the option to terminate
Fair
if
enough,
we
it's something.
Yes.
Okay.
And the DEP stuff, you can apply for land use permits. Those are the renewable, or the applicant can, the renewable permits that DEP issues for certain specific uses of their land that are generally, you know, generally passive, of course.
You may well be
so-
right, but what I am trying to retain is the value of the land. If that land is just dedicated to open space, and so the value of that land goes down substantially when it comes to bargaining with DEP.
Does. So I'm happy to draft something for consideration by the board and by the GVHO. Just need a few more specific parameters before I can put it together.
I guess $1 per year, some kind of lease, right? I guess.
Yes, that's what it would be, or, you know, a license even could be that as well.
Yes, and maybe a
Revocable
license
license.
agreement for 1 cent a year.
Something like that.
I'm
Peter,
not trying to make,
I want to
I'm
understand.
not
what
trying
you-
to make money out of it.
want to understand what you just said, that the value of the land goes down because it's just open space. Are you suggesting that we want to raise the value by contending that it's a developable plot, and we don't want to lose that? You're not talking about.
Yes, I
actually-
am. It's exactly what I want to do.
So you're not talking about actually developing it, or, you know, building that house.
No, I'm talking about
Okay. So
the right to develop makes the land more attractive.
Okay.
One of the
So
reasons
we
that
just need to
the-
basically retain all the rights to this
Hmm.
piece, and so they're not diminished somehow.
I just want to clarify, as it exists now, Peter, it's zoned single family, that parcel.
Yes, and it's a little bit more complicated, I think, because it may be part of the buffer in between the two zoning areas. You may know more about this than I do, Rich, but I think our town law has buffer areas between multifamily and single family. Manor Drive is single family, and across the road is multifamily. And I think this may be the buffer in between. Am I wrong about buffer areas?
Yeah, it's in that document when Jan went out there and he sent us a drawing on a proposed development. It's in that document. I have to look it up.
But I think I would guess that this is a prime buffer area.
Anyway, we've already made the study, right? And that document exists, and it
Yes,
has established it as a potential for 1 or 2 homes. So, okay.
All right.
That's not going to change.
But actually, before I go, just to say to the board, just to make it clear, we would look to build and maintain, but we are not looking to insure the space. That would because it's still town property.
Thank you.
Hey,
So it's
John.
going to cost the town money, is what you're saying.
Well, it's still town property right now.
I will find out what the cost to the town is of insuring
Jonathan.
it.
Yes.
Jim Morio has his hand up. I don't know if he wants to speak on behalf of GBHO.
Yeah, no, thanks, Tony. I was going to second Peter's suggestion or question that if that property could just be peeled off as a separate parcel, so that if you were to sell or develop the area that's above the pond, it would not include any kind of wetlands area, and probably would be more attractive to a buyer if it did not include wetlands. So I second what Peter's suggestion, maybe carving that off into a separate parcel.
I don't know.
I think the idea was just to be able to say it's developable, but not actually do it. And we've already sort of demonstrated through our study with Jan. That's probably adequate for the purposes of sitting down with DP, I think.
You're also making it more marketable if you're selling the part that's potentially developable as one home, because then somebody would be paying taxes on a bigger parcel that they can't develop. So it may actually make it more economically viable by peeling off the non-developable part, and so that whoever wants it for one home potentially.
Yeah, but do we actually have to do that to demonstrate the value in a negotiation over the value of the property? Can't we just say, look, here's the study? And we can-
Dan, I think we've got enough to demonstrate the value of the property. We have, as long as we don't do anything to make it impossible to go ahead with Jan's plan.
And I'm looking at, I did find that document. It says, so it's residential 2 acre, and currently one home would be permissible without requirement of any zoning variances.
Yeah, but with a zoning variance, I think you could put in 2 probably.
Yes.
So Jan's whatever he prepared on this addressed the slope component of it in the upper part of the parcel.
He just says, because of the extent of steep slopes and wetlands on the property, the development potential is fairly restricted.
Right.
To develop the property beyond more than one home would require zoning variances from the ZBA, primarily due to the inability to achieve the required 40,000 square foot contiguous buildable area requirement per lot.
That's where we are.
All right.
We'll do that and see if we can come to an agreement fairly rapidly with Jonathan. I assume you represent your group, right?
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you to the board.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Jim.
Good work.
And I really think it's a very ingenious and attractive plan. Jane, are you aware of Dana's request?
I mean, I saw on the agenda and I think I understand it.
Are you skipping the body cameras?
What? No, we're going to get to body cam.
Okay.
To body cameras next. But we've also got this this request from Dana that we issue a blanket waiver to the Lewisboro Playground Project Committee headed by Valerie Cancro and Sarah Cohen to waive all fees for fundraising activities on town properties and requests for usage of town land to hold fundraisers with, at the same time, giving Tony and Dana a veto on their requests. Can I have a second on that? Jane,
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next
Dana.
one.
I said thank you to Dana wherever she is. She's been very supportive of this project and I appreciate that proactive step.
Okay, you have a proposal from the police for body cameras and support things like you've got to change the tasers in part so that when you touch the taser, your body camera automatically activates. There are several other things here, and by the time you've gone through it, you have a total cost of $106,000. But in year one, the cost is $27,000, and then $20,000 in successive years until you get up to that total of 105. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but there has been considerable discussion of the importance of body cameras in the Police Review and Revision Committee. And it's one of those things which everybody, believe it or not, seems to agree on, that people want the police to have them in order that they can check what actually happened, and the police want them so that people can check what actually happened. Leo has promised me that he can find the money from places he squirreled money away instead of nuts. I would like to approve this so I can tell the police, I admit, I'm trying to do it so I can tell the Police Revision and Reform Committee on Wednesday night that we've done it.
And Peter, if I can elaborate more on what we're getting with this, at a high level, and I sat on 2 of the meetings with Axon Enterprises together with our police chief, our sergeant, and our lieutenant.
In that case, you know way more than I do.
Yeah, I think so. So basically, this is our police department. They have existing tasers which are old, so those would be replaced with this new taser system, which, to your point, whenever they are utilized or pulled out of their holster,
they don't have to be utilized. They
pulled out of the whole holster. That's what I meant.
Yes.
Yeah. So the camera activates. It also, there's an add-on that when their sidearm gets pulled out of the holster, it activates the camera. The state police use this system as well. So if they approach a scene where maybe the state police are already there or vice versa, their cameras will automatically turn on. It'll sense that the state police are there, their cameras are on, and the, I think it's some wireless technology, might be Bluetooth, activates the other system. There's central storage, so the information that gets recorded gets stored in the central repository that's accessed by the various agencies that are investigating that particular incident, including district attorneys.
So Tony, this is state-of-the-art technology on this.
It is. It's very. There's also a training component. It's what do they call it? Virtual reality training, which allows you to depict different scenarios. So, for example, if you're responding to a situation with an emotionally disturbed person, you go through that training as an officer, and you can also put yourself in the position of the person, the ED person, right, or EDP. So it's a very high tech, state of the art, latest and greatest in terms of this technology, and the fact that it's being used by the state police and other departments in Westchester as well. I think Terrytown is using it, and I forget who else. But the important thing is that it's used by state police and who we work very closely with, and they complement each other. So. Yeah, and to Peter's point, yeah, there is the upfront or the first year is $26,000 and change, and then it's $19,000, just shy of 20 for the next 4 years.
So when that happens, is it like you're paid up? Is there no annual like maintenance thing that goes on? Is there no fee beyond that, or it's just like you're done?
So this is a fixed term. So if you do want additional maintenance, you can apply for that.
So this is basically an annual fee of $27,000 or $20,000 or whatever.
No, this is for the equipment, and it's the equipment with the training and with everything that you get to be able to start using the system.
If you want to continue the training, you have to pay more, but you don't have to pay $20,000 a year.
I guess what I'm trying to distinguish here is if this is something where it's a large part of it is a capital expense, and if the units, have a longer lifetime than this, if they're if it's 10-year lifetime or whatever, then you could justify, say, bonding for the whole 107 or whatever up front out for 10 years and soften the blow a little bit. But
I don't really want to bond for it. I think we could, in theory.
I'm not usually a big fan of bonding.
What are you doing, Dan? You're
No, I'm not unless it actually has a long lifetime and the bonding matches that lifetime. Where I hate bonding for roads because that's not matching the lifetime of the
okay.
item.
So what about, does this have anything any connection with data storage that's generated or no?
Any connection?
I-
So yeah, so it's stored in the cloud, so there is an offsite storage.
Okay.
Yep.
I like the fact that it covers tasers, because the truth is that when our police have used force, while I've been around, it has always been a taser.
Mm.
I think there are 3 instances that I remember of them using a taser.
I'm happy to make a motion.
Yeah,
Using a
let's do it then.
one.
Let's do it.
I'm happy to make a motion to approve it.
I'll second. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Could you roll call that, being that it's expenditure? Sorry,
All right.
be that guy.
Okay, so Richard,
Aye.
Tony,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Jane,
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Okay, the
Is that
ayes
all right?
have it.
That's great.
Next, I'd like to, does anybody, oh yeah, we do
Public
have
comment?
somebody who wants to make a public comment. So let's open the second public comment period. Does anybody wish to speak? I've got 2 people, I think.
Yes, so let me ask them again, 2 minutes. Robert Whitaker has been waiting patiently. Robert, I'm asking you to unmute.
Okay,
Robert?
can you hear me?
Yep, you have 2 minutes.
An expert has, this is about outdoor boilers. And one expert has said of outdoor wood boilers, quote, "There is no safe way to use outdoor wood boilers. No matter what wood you use, even seasoned wood, they inherently burn inefficiently, and inhaling the smoke from any outdoor boiler is dangerous to human life." The town of Pound Ridge building inspector has said, quote, "I would never issue a permit for an outdoor wood boiler." The board is ready to ban new boilers, I think, to protect theoretical new victims. But it is absolutely critical that it also protects the people who are not theoretically, but in fact, being victimized now, who suffer and will continue to suffer unless there is a complete ban. This is really a life and death issue for a number of town residents. And the only ethical thing to do is to ban all outdoor boilers without exception. Anything else is sacrificing people who are being harmed now and leaving them to suffer. It's like saying we're going to stop people from burning from harming other people unless they've already started doing it, in which case they can continue. I recognize that a complete ban should allow a reasonable time for current users to convert, a grace period before the code applies to them. But I suggest that 3 months is more than enough time for anyone to replace their outdoor boiler with something else. So if a ban were to take effect on April 1st, current users have until July 1st before the ban applies to them as well. The type of wood, and that seems to be an issue here, the type of wood is important for indoor fireplaces and wood stoves, where the dry season wood makes a big difference. But outdoor boilers are innately dangerous, whatever wood is burning. And finally, I differ with the lawsuits. I represented New York City and towns in Westchester for 40 years of law practice. I defended them. The town has a duty to reasonably protect its residents against known dangerous conditions. And the key is known. And if it fails to so
Can we mute whoever is talking?
Can I just finish this one sentence?
No, I'm not trying to mute you. I'm trying to mute the noise in the background.
All right. I'm almost done.
Okay.
But the legal thing is important because I heard something different. And this was the field that I worked in for literally 40 years, representing, as I said, New York City and Westchester towns against exactly this kind of thing. A town has a duty to reasonably protect its residents against known, and that's the key, known dangerous conditions. And if it fails to so act, and a resident is harmed as a result of that failure, the town will be held liable for damages that the condition causes. And in this case, since the damage would be a major physical harm, you'd be talking truly millions to tens of millions of dollars. And yes, the homeowner would be sued and their homeowner's policy would be involved, but the town would be the deep pocket and the lawyers, the plaintiff's lawyers would go after the town. As a resident of the town, that
Okay,
concerns me.
it's
I'm
over
done.
2 minutes, Robert.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
thank you. Right now I'm asking Carol Cernak to unmute. Carol, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, this is Carol Cernak. First of all, I would like to say the 2-minute limit on speaking is bullshit because it's
Okay,
against
now we're
PR.
just, okay, so now you're muted. And next we have Jody. It says Jody PS. Jody?
Hi, I'm Jody Shearer. I live in Golden's Bridge. I'm actually on this meeting because of the pocket park in my neighborhood. But after listening to everything that's going on, I have 2 things that I really wanted to quickly say. The first is that I have a very good friend who lives on Flintlock Ridge Road, who I've known for 25 years, and I've been at her house for the past 25 years, and never in those 25 years until this year have I seen and experienced the smoke that they're getting in their yard. It's insane, absolutely insane. And for a town like Lewisboro, who's so environmentally conscious, to allow this to be going on is crazy. They really shouldn't be. Outdoor wood boiler, burning unseasoned wood should not be allowed at all. Besides that, my thoughts on the tree, 3-tree limit. I know people were saying that you should be able to cut down trees that are closer to your house. I think if you're really going to pass that law, you really have to also take into the account, I've got a lot of big trees that are right on the road, right on 22. I'm responsible for those trees. And if I'm not allowed to cut, say, 5 of those trees down at once without getting a permit, you can't just look at the proximity to a house. You've got to look at the proximity to roads and other areas that may impact lots of people in terms of damaging other people's properties and streets and things like that.
Okay, thank you, Jody. Next, I'm asking Jack Zittimer to unmute.
Hi, thank you. I just want to express my support for this pocket park idea, as we live on Fairmount Road, and I've looked at the Stein property for the longest time, thinking that how wonderful it would actually be to have trails back in that property. It's a beautiful property with lots of meandering areas and such that would lend themselves naturally to trails. I know right now I can't, I'd love to be able to understand more about this DEC swap and what's going on with the Golden's Bridge shopping center. I happen to be a passionate supporter of the Acme, so I'm disappointed to hear that they may be possibly leaving, but I'd love to see some equivalent reasonable inexpensive and well-stocked shopping center in that space if Acme's not going to be doing there, because I think they've done a really great job actually. But that town park, pocket park, I think looks wonderful. I'd love to see something seating that looks a little bit more natural than the green benches. I realize this was just a preliminary drawing. And I'd love to actually, I don't quite understand I think I sort of understand what the swap concept is, but I would hate to see that property to developed very much at all. I would really love to see it developed as an open space with trails and possibly even connecting to what I think is some more 12 acres of watershed property that's back there behind it. I think at one point I tried to engage at one point I tried to engage the what do you call it? Not the Nature Conservancy, but not Audubon Society, but one of the other, the Golden's Bridge, Lewisboro Land Trust, to purchase that property, but they had expressed that there wasn't, that much interest at the time. But I'm happy to hear the town has it. So anyhow, that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks, Jack. Next, I'm asking Eric Swartout to unmute.
Good evening, all. I am in Katona Close. I'm at 1 Lowell Court, which is the unit closest to this proposed pocket park. My deck overlooks it. Anybody who's from Fairmont looks up at my deck, you'll see I've got 4 or 5 bird feeders, and I love birds and love nature. I do have a couple of concerns, being as the one who's going to be overlooking it. I'm glad to see that the idea of a compost pile was maybe excludable, because I just don't know what kind of bugs and smells that would lead to. The idea of a lending library to me sounds like a place for people to drop junk that they don't want. But if preserved with a couple of with a couple of benches and stuff to improve the property, I would be for it. The only one thing else I would want to add, and it wasn't brought up, was parking. I know the concept is for people in the neighborhood to walk to and use this. I know over the past 6 months, I've seen the people who are considering this project. All of a sudden, on a Saturday morning, I look at my window and there's 4 cars out there. I would not want to see Fairmont, which is very narrow and people drive too fast on it, already turn into a parking lot with 4 or 5 cars at a time. People going there. So not sure what could be done to limit that. But again, very much in favor of preserving open space. Would much rather have a park there than 2 houses. But just a couple other things to consider. I said my deck is the one directly overlooking it. That's all. Thank you.
Electric bikes, that's the solution for Fairmont.
I don't think there's any parking allowed in that area. Maybe a little further up, but anyway. Yeah.
Thank you. There's one hand up, but she used profanity. So if you want me to unmute her again, I will. If not, I won't.
No.
Okay.
We've got a rule and we need to enforce it.
Yeah. Stacy Zuck would like to speak. Stacy, I'm unmuting you. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks. My question is for Mr. Fulchetti. So I wanted to ask you about the pending permit for the outdoor wood boiler. And my question is, knowing that the unit has been deemed burning illegal substances from a DEC officer and the other items that I listed earlier, would the town be liable for issuing a permit to an outdoor wood boiler knowing it has been used for illegal substances? And a follow-up question would be, the permit would be issued in 2021, yet the boiler was installed in 2006, according to the homeowner. And should not the EPA current standards be held to for the permit being issued in 2021 versus EPA standards of 2006? And if you could, you don't have to answer if you don't know, but just things to think about.
Greg is muted.
You're muted, Greg.
Okay. Oh, shit.
Does the board want me to answer? I'm happy to give an answer to the portions that I feel that appropriate to answer to the board for me to do that. Do you want me to?
Sure.
I mean, it's a question which ultimately is going to involve you and the building inspector.
So with respect to the permitting of any existing unit, okay, if the law as contemplated doesn't provide for any new permits. So if a permit hasn't been issued at the time the law is enacted, then it's not eligible for the issuance. If the question here becomes, if it's pending, then maybe you need to address an application date in whatever version of the law you're going to reconsider or you're going to enact. To me, if the permit application is in before the law is passed, the permit should be issued for any improvement as long as it otherwise meets the requirements of any of the applicable provisions of the town code.
And just to add, the permit has been issued. We're waiting. The building department's waiting on the on some open items before they issue the certificate of compliance.
And with respect to the liability, I think I saw Rich nodding his head before when I was talking about what's known as the Cuffey standard for municipal government liability for discharging ministerial duties. I don't have the same viewpoint of the town's liability for either deciding not to legislate. You can't be compelled to legislate absent some government mandate for either from the state or from the federal government. And you're certainly doing it discretionarily now and what you're contemplating. But I don't see, and I'm not minimizing what the complaints are and the proposed and the concerns and the possible and the apparent health risks. There are, things that the town board is able to do, but legislating is largely a discretionary function, and that's what you're doing right now. You're exercising your discretion as to whether or not you want to enact this type of section to your code and what it's going to say and how it's going to read once you do. So I think that's as best as I can answer the first part of the question. I respectfully disagree with Mr. Whitaker's assessment of what the town's liability is in that circumstance, and I certainly understand he's got a lot of years of practice. That's my viewpoint on it.
Thank you.
Okay, the next person that I'm asking to unmute is Rebecca Gordon. Rebecca, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I have a quick question. Stacy Zook mentioned that the boiler in question is from 2006, I believe she said. If the code has changed for the use of boilers, then does the permit factor in the code and any changes to the code so that if the boiler is not up to code, that it cannot be used? And that would be a question for Mr. Falchetti. That's all.
Okay.
Peter, do you want me to answer that?
Well, at some point, we've got people asking you for legal advice.
That's why I usually only answer the questions of the board in the circumstance, and that's why I'm asking you first. But generally with respect to any permit that is, if the permit's issued and the local legislation changes, there's either a provision that it's grandfathered in or it's got to meet the provisions of whatever the new legislation is. And in this circumstance, you're contemplating that anything that's issued is going to meet the current or what you would enact as performance and use standards for those units.
Okay.
Okay, and the other two have already spoken.
Yeah.
I'd like to adjourn this, or I'd like to finish this public comment period. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion, all in favor? Aye. I'd like to move on to approval of claims. I'd like to propose that we approve claims. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Polling of the board. Let's begin with Jane.
I have nothing further to
Right
add.
hand. That's what?
I have nothing further to add.
Oh, okay. Dan.
Me either.
Tony.
I have a few things from Parks and Rec. So the first one is limited camp and pool are happening like last year. Check the website for more information. They are putting together spring summer brochure, which will be due out in mailboxes in mid-April. We are having, Parks and Rec are having a restaurant weeks to help our local eateries. Check out their email blast, Facebook, and website for more information. This week it's Bellows Pizza and Bellows Pizza in Golden's Bridge and Horse and Hound in South Salem are the two that are being sponsored this week.
Tony, what's the date when we go up to 75%?
I don't know. I read it somewhere, but I don't recall what the date is.
Do you remember?
I want to say the 19th.
Okay, you're probably right. But it's relatively close. So I think this is an excellent idea if it kind of coincides with that.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, next item. Don't forget, was somebody gonna say something?
No.
Okay. If anyone needs help with COVID shots, please contact Pam Veith at the office, 232-6162. And this primarily is for senior citizens or anyone that's
only for senior citizens.
Only for senior citizens, correct. Spring programs are rolling out. T-ball, basketball leagues, and clinics outdoors, adult softball, STEM classes in the pavilions. Check the website until the brochure comes out with the offerings. This Sunday is Maureen Cole's Zoom into History on Cross River at 3 p.m. For the Zoom credentials, you have to register or email Dana at the rec department. Please remember to leash your dog and pick up after your dog's on town property. There's been a lot of dogs off their leash. And the last item is the Lions Club and Parks and Rec are working together for a spring scavenger hunt on Saturday, April 3rd, with a COVID-safe Lewisboro bunny and Lewisboro lion. More details to follow. April 3rd, mark your calendars.
Lewisboro bunny?
Yes. That's the one that went around, that was paraded around town.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Hey, I'm sorry. Can I jump in here? I almost let this thing go again. And we said the budget for the the email, digital storage, backup, et cetera, support for the task force. Yeah. You want to approve that?
Yes, but do we have a figure?
Yeah, we got the quote. I had shared it. It's roughly, because it depends on the number of seats, but we're roughly looking at something like $350 to $400 a month ongoing, plus there's a $450 setup fee. So, on an annual basis, could be as much as $5,000. But this is this is email, storage, backup that complies with the the archiving requirements and all that, and the support from the support company.
Okay, we said we were going to do it, so let's do it.
Anybody have any questions or additional input?
Dan, is that the same company that we use today for our current web services, or?
No, it's a firm that Sustainable Westchester uses right now, but because we're moving away from the Microsoft platform as being something that was a little clunkier for what we had to do, we didn't want to have to go to go back to Joel every time we wanted to open up a folder for somebody to use. And so have a platform that's a little more friendly. And as I said, we was on 2 sessions with Joel with the service byte principle, and Joel's happy with the arrangement. So,
do you want to make a motion to spend up to $5,000 for 2021, and then
yeah, that's right. It should be about 5,000 because it'll be shorter than a year, but it does have the setup cost, so that'll cover it.
And again, Dan, this is, and I apologize if you emailed us and I didn't read it, but this is a package that's going to allow for the overall project management.
Yeah, you want me to pull up? You want me to pull up the quote? I think I have it here.
And the reason I'm asking about that is because the Intent Advisory Board. Intent Advisory Board, Joseph Noy introduced us to something called Asana, which
so that's a project management software, but it's not going to cover the full. I mean, they need just email addresses, storage. As I say, there's there's going to be a real important requirement for retention and backup and all that. So it's all those pieces.
Okay. But can't we get that with the existing provider of our web?
So yeah, but that's the Microsoft system, and it would be SharePoint and
Right.
all those things. And Joel, that has never been used in that way by the town, and he doesn't really sort of have any background on that. We'd have to like spend time trying to figure it out, and it's just a little bit more involved. At least the Google system, everybody sort of knows Gmail and may have bumped into the Drive. So you're already down the road, and then you have access to all the other pieces as well.
Right. Okay.
Okay, I'll second that. Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And Dan, could you send me what you're talking about so I can incorporate
Oh,
that
yeah.
into a
Yeah, I'll send-
resolution?
Yep.
Oh, Greg is
Thank you.
going to want us to have a roll call vote on that.
Ah, okay.
I'm getting the hang of it.
Yeah, look at that.
Wow, okay.
Dan,
Rich?
aye. Jane?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Myself? Aye.
And
Thank
who
you,
was the
Dan and Joel.
second?
What?
Who was the second?
I'll be the second.
I think Dan made the motion and Peter was the second.
Okay, thank you.
So Peter, with the potential monies we're getting from the feds, the America's
All
Care,
right.
can we pay for this? Take $5,000.
Yes, I think
out of that?
so. I think we might just manage it. You should all be aware that if what is on the website of our senior senator is correct and actually happens, and those are huge ifs, the town will be, I think, 1.3 million with the better.
Mhm.
But we anticipate that even if that amount of money comes through, there will be huge restrictions on how it is spent. And that may not make it nearly as helpful as it appears at first sight. That's the end of what I've got to say. I mean, this hasn't even gone through the House of Representatives unless it went through today, did it? Anybody know? I don't know. But it, but Senator Schumer is waving the flag for it, and his people have issued a series of figures for everybody, for each municipality in Westchester.
So we skipped over Richard because I jumped in for fear of forgetting it. So sorry, Richard. And
Oh, Rich,
yeah.
have your say.
Okay, real quickly, Greg's encyclopedic knowledge of the law was correct, 75% effective March 19th. I just looked that up. Three thank you. Yes, three thank yous. Thank you to the supervisor and Chief Alfano for all their hard work in leading the Police Reform and Reinvention Committee, which we have a draft and we heard from the public, and we're going to be moving towards an adoption on that, I believe, on March 22 in time for the April 1 deadline. Thank you and congratulations to the Lewisboro Land Trust, who announced their acceptance of a 20.6 acre conservation easement. That's open space with the Walter Partners. And third, and want to just, and last, want to just congratulate the continued great work of our police department. We heard about Officer Gregg as well as Sergeant Llewellyn. So thank you for that.
That's all as far as I'm concerned, except that the best news I've had is that our governor can no longer issue a reform and reinvention demand for Park and Rec, which should make my life a little easier. Thanks a lot.
Peter, you need to mention the next meeting, please.
Oh, heck. It's, yeah, except the sheet I've got here doesn't have that.
March
March
22nd.
22nd.
March 22nd? Okay. The next meeting of the board will be on March 22nd, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. by Zoom. Thank you very much.
And motion to,
Oh, motion to adjourn.
are you
Do I
going
have a
into exec
second?
session?
No, we're not going into exec session.
Okay.
Oh, we're not? We don't have an exec session?
No.
Don't look too happy now, Jane.
Going into hour 5.5. I second the closing of this meeting.
And I will subtract something from Greg's compensation because he isn't being made to stay for Greg for
Absolutely.
exec
No
session.
interviews? Nothing?
Let's just interview somebody randomly.
Just yell out the window?
Yeah.
You want to interview someone?
And I really apologize to everybody on the board for losing all my papers before the meeting began. Heaven knows where they are. But the result is I was doing the meeting kind of guessing where I was going.
We
You
didn't
would
even
never
notice.
know. And
Never
so
know.
I personally accept your apology.
Oh, I'll tell you one thing. Jane got me to go to a thing in Tarrytown, of all places, on Saturday morning. Yes. Which was kind of intriguing when I taught. It was an effort by the police to rebuild or to build a relationship with the kids of Tarrytown and the mothers. And I don't know how successful it was. I suspect it was not as well publicized as it should have been.
I think that we went at 10 when it started. And when I looped back, there was already a line of cars and people walking in.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Probably check in to see how it went before we make assertions about how
Because I was amazed that I got there and went through with nobody in front of me.
I know. Well, we went at 10 a.m. so that we wouldn't interrupt too much of their process. But what it was a community policing event called Books with Boys, because Chief Alfano had mentioned wanting to do more community policing events, especially for the children. And so this one is called Books with Badges, and
the vital thing is I got a cookie.
That's right. The vital thing.
All right.